I feel like we're crooked. You have to move over.
Do I?
You
Do I really?
You have to. And
we're live.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome. It is Thursday Night Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. We've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight.
We do.
I don't know how we're going to get to it all.
We have a lot of stuff.
How do we get to it all, Jen?
I don't know. I'm not exactly sure even what it is you want to talk about because my head is not in necessarily the same space with yours politically.
Well,
like all I'm into is genocide. Like that's it for me, basically, pretty much all the time.
Here's where I think
occasionally Australian firefighters and puppies.
Here's what we can start with, since Angela will be here to talk about everything that's going on with the Libertarian Party, obviously the things that we agree on, how we can bridge the divide and all that. But I think it is very important that we do talk about the fact that the best labor leader, in my opinion, I think, Jen, you would share that opinion, in the country right now, Shawn Fain of the UAW, has decided to endorse Joe Biden for president.
Can we clarify that we don't know that I don't think it's a matter of Shawn Fain decided to endorse Joe Biden. I actually do not believe that's how that went down.
Okay, so
I believe that as somebody who represents rank and file, that whatever decision was made, it wasn't some top-down decision.
Well,
don't blame him. That's
what
I'm saying.
You're going to hear that that's not necessarily the case, but we're going to play you a clip so you guys will have an idea of exactly why he made this choice. He has obviously a lot to say about the former president.
Donald Trump said, and I quote, "I think that the unions are really, really hurting very badly what's going on with the auto industry," end of quote. Joe Biden, having helped save the auto industry,
all right,
said
I don't get it. He was there for 12 minutes. Okay, let's even say we're willing to put aside what happened with the railroad workers and just deal directly with this. I don't see how he did anything really to help them in any way. But I will also say that Shawn Fain does look particularly good with facial hair.
Okay.
I'm just saying, set that silver fox
on the American auto workers and won. In 2015, when he was first running for president, Trump went even further. He said the concessions we took weren't enough. He wanted to do a rotation in the auto industry of the jobs in Michigan and the Midwest, so union auto workers would be begging for their jobs back at lower pay. He wanted to put the race to the bottom on steroids to screw the American working class. Joe Biden bet.
I don't know whether or not that's necessary. I don't know all of the answers to that.
Jen, do you have a Fain to see?
I do. And he's got this whole silver fox thing going on right now. I'm not happy with the content of this speech.
Well, he's going to talk about Joe a little more.
I know, which is gross to me. It's really distracting. I'd rather watch him than stop putting up that picture of Joe. I don't
on the American worker, while Donald Trump blamed the American worker. Today, I'm proud to stand up here with your International Executive Board and announce that the UAW is endorsing Joe Biden for President of the United States. And I am honored now.
No, what were their choices? What were their choices?
He waited until after the New Hampshire primary, in which Joe won with over 70% of the vote as a write-in candidate,
which is off the chart. So really, like, what were they going to do?
Yeah, Dean Phillips got $1 million at like the 11 o'clock hour.
I don't know enough about him to know that he's necessarily better for labor anyway. I don't know anything about Dean Phillips.
And then, of course, Marianne Williamson couldn't even crack 5%. So I understand that this is more about...
It's upsetting.
This is what it is. RFK, who is the one truly viable third-party candidate. I mean, the only time you saw RFK in support of labor was with the striking writers in LA. And the only reason for that is because of his wife. So if you...
Yeah, he doesn't scream labor.
Yeah, if you take that out of the equation, you know, Cheryl is not advocating on behalf of the people in her industry, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with advocating for actors and writers. No. They deserve just as much labor support as those that are making automobiles. But there's no question that this is a political calculation on his part. And again, I don't know that this is not necessarily him. Like he just said, this was an executive board decision. I don't find him to be a dictator.
To invite President Joe Biden to come and address our great union and join us in our fight for economic and social justice for the UAW and the entire working class. So UAW family, let's stand up and welcome the man who stood up for us. Please welcome the current President of the United States. We will re-elect Joe Biden.
It's just pitiful. Do we have to watch Joe? I don't want to watch Joe.
Hello, UAW!
Oh, no, don't make... Oh, no. Where's his kente cloth? You know what? This is somewhat depressing to me, actually. And again, I don't know what their options were. Like, they don't have options.
Benefits from what you do. You know, please take a seat if you have one.
I don't want to watch
as they come.
I really don't want to watch
Starting
this.
with your president, Shawn Fain.
It's
ridiculous.
I can't watch for 5 seconds because he's already mumbling over his words.
No, he can't talk. But this was what was there was no option. But I would like to hope that whatever backroom deal was eventually struck between him and that executive board, that somehow the UAW did get something from it. Now, we might not ever find out what that is, or for a long time, I don't know, but I'm hopeful that Shawn Fain wouldn't just say, okay, sure, we're just going to endorse him without any sort of concession.
Now we're going to play you a clip of how Shawn Fain really feels when he isn't doing any type of grandstanding in front of the president, which unfortunately you have to do. But this is him being maybe a little too forthcoming about where his rank and file stand when it comes to supporting Joe Biden, to Fox Business's Neil Cavuto.
The union membership in the past was very strong for Ronald Reagan in both elections. George Bush Sr. benefited from the union vote. Many of your own members now, Shawn, are very big Trump supporters. I don't know the breakdown, you know that far better than I, but that a good many of them are at Trump rallies and are MAGA enthusiasts. How do you feel about that?
Look, it's what makes this country, you know, a beacon for other countries. You know, it's democracy in action. Look, let me be clear about this. A great majority of our members will not vote for President Biden. Yes, some will. But that's the reality of this. The majority of our members are going to vote their paychecks. They're going to vote for an economy that works for them, and they're going to vote for a president. When you look at these two presidents, the choice is very clear about which one stands up with the working class and stands up for labor, and which one stands for the billionaire class, and that's his base.
Okay, he had it all the way until the last 10 seconds.
I'm hoping they got something for this. Look, that didn't happen without private conversations. There were conversations involved. So I don't know what was decided. I mean, I would like to think that, you know, that Shawn Fain was told that you do this, we'll, you know, work on getting the PRO Act through. And I don't know. It's disappointing all around.
But here's the problem
and he is just so cute with facial hair.
But here's the problem with endorsing an incumbent president. They have authority to do something. And if you're not getting them to do something in order to get your vote, then there is almost no point.
Then they won't do something once they're elected, because why would they?
And then the audacity of the current president to put out a tweet today saying that if you reelect me and give me a bigger majority in the Senate, I'm going to codify Roe. I will sign it the day I win re-election. It's like,
oh my God.
I've seen this story one too many times before. You're not fooling anybody.
Wasn't he the vice president when Barack Obama had a supermajority and could have done that?
One of the first things.
Wasn't he sitting right there?
When President Obama was first elected, they actually asked him, you campaigned about codifying Roe. And he said, yeah, we're not working on that
right now.
So that to me really says it all.
But the thing is, Joe, and this was something I thought that was very profound that I was watching. There was like a focus group where they were asking people about if they were going to support Joe Biden. And one of the issues, of course, that we know the Democrats are going to run on is Roe versus Wade. You guys lost that. You already showed us you don't care enough. You just campaign on it.
And so when everybody's out there saying that Trump put 3 Supreme Court justices up, that we're going to vote against it. Okay. But at the same time, even after that, you still had an opportunity, to codify.
So
and now it's getting codified at the state level.
Can I finish what I was saying?
I'm sorry.
And so what I thought was very interesting is that the news person, it's not really a news person, the talking head asked one of the girls on this panel, a young girl, she had to be 20s, and said, I mean, how do you feel about, reproductive freedom? Is that one of your, main points? And she said, yes, but as much as, I feel like that would be, maybe safer, wouldn't I be a hypocrite if I vote for Joe Biden for reproductive freedom when he's slaughtering women and children in Gaza? So it's like, yeah, it is. You're right. It's where he gets. So, I mean, even the fact that there is this choice issue, that's not going to supersede Geno Joe's genocide. It's just not. It's just not, because it's not just choice for women here. It's about choice for women everywhere. And what I saw yesterday is a woman walking around Gaza carrying her dead child who looks to be about 6-7 years old, like not a baby. And she's walking around carrying her dead son because she doesn't want to just leave his body and there's nowhere to bury anybody.
Maybe that's a good place to start, because if there's one there's one thing that the libertarians get absolutely correct, it is this issue of endless war, which is completely pointless. And of course, the ones who usually advocate for it are ones who will never, ever put themselves in harm's way in order to fight on behalf of whatever that cause is, whether it is in Gaza, whether it is in Ukraine, whether it's in Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Iraq.
We're everywhere.
Everywhere. We're everywhere is the song by the Fleetwood Mac. She is the chair of the Libertarian Party, and she definitely packs quite the punch. Angela McCardle, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hi, absolutely. We have a lot of libertarian friends. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I don't know, what did you want to start with? Was there a particular direction?
Well, we could talk about what we agree on and what we don't agree on. But I think without question, we know that the hot topic right now is definitely what's going on in the Middle East. Jen has been extremely vocal about this, especially, if you want to tell Angela.
Yeah, I was raised second generation Jew in Florida, Floridian Jew, very Zionist, everything was about Israel. Everything was about Israel. You collected money for Israel. We planted trees for Israel. Everything was about Israel. And it's taken me many years of deprogramming to get to where I am now. But that is why now this is the hill that I feel the need to die on, because I know that I participated and was actually used as a tool in ethnic cleansing. So it's sort of it's personal to me in that regard, because I was personally lied to by Israel and Zionists and propagandized and used as an ethnic cleansing tool. So I am very angry about that. I try to say that without totally sounding enraged, but I'm very angry about that. But so my take on what's going on there is very biased in that regard. But from a policy standpoint, I think that's what we want to really get into in terms of because libertarians are our anti-war friends.
Yeah, absolutely. We are unapologetically anti-war, and I try to keep that in mind when I do discuss it, because sometimes people get really emotional about this topic, and you can, when you're trying to have a dialogue with someone and engage with them in good faith, I think there's a tendency for me, especially, personally, to take a little bit of an apologetic tone. And I always try to check myself, there's no reason to apologize for not wanting to murder people overseas. Very basic. I'm so sorry. I don't support murdering people overseas.
Right.
That's as apologetic, as I feel that I can become on this issue. I'm glad it's something that we agree on. It's an issue that is really hard to take a principled stand on when it's, when you have huge lobbying groups pushing back against you, when you have people trying to craft political narratives and say that it's just a progressive issue, it's just far left activists who block traffic. And it's like, no, you know what? Like, this is a human issue. It shouldn't be a left-right issue. It's just like, like the anti-war position is a pro-family issue. Like, we want to keep families intact. We want to save children's lives. It's just like, it's the end-all be-all issue. It can certainly be an economic issue, but really, like, this transcends economic arguments. I mean, when it comes to war, just in general, like, there's no economic theory in nuclear winter. Yeah.
Right. No, and your money's not gonna buy clean water for you either.
No.
Like, it's like the damage and destruction that the war does to infrastructure and all of the stuff from the military industrial complex is not anything that benefits anybody except the profiteers at the top of those businesses. And that's it. The rest of us, nobody else benefits from any of that.
No, it's totally nuts. It's totally insane. Scott Horton is someone you guys should try to get on your show at some point. He is just a prolific author. He's at a KPFK radio show for a really long time. He's a libertarian and he comes from the left. And the way that he breaks down the Afghanistan war in his book Fool's Errand, it's so like humbling and shocking, and like it kind of makes you like cringe and feel humiliated that you didn't realize how bad it is. He talks about like the people in Afghan, these goat herders who've never heard of New York City. They don't know anything, like some of them have never seen television. And
right.
We're going over there with this absurd notion, trying to explain to them what a metropolis area is and 9/11 and airplanes. And they're like, a town, a village. So a bunch of villages. And then they did what? And we're like, in this thing that you have never heard of and you have no concept of, that's why we got to murder everyone around here and bomb all of your weddings. And it's like Kafka-esque. It's so absurd, and horrifically tragic. But man, what a trip.
Angela, without question, and we had communicated with Justin Amash in the past, the best. Certainly, from a left perspective, the most principled member of the GOP is Thomas Massie. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah.
He's seemingly the only person who really is principled on this issue. Like, he's not wishy-washy. He doesn't try to play to the Democratic establishment like some supposed anti-war representative is supposed to be. Can you talk about the overarching effect of corporate special interest money in the political arena, which is also a tremendous crossover between progressives and libertarians? Get the corporate filth the F out of politics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think what happens is well-meaning people, a few of them, find their way into politics, and then they become constrained by this because they get threatened. We're not going to reelect you. We're going to run someone really hard against you who's much worse on this issue than you would be, And so it essentially gatekeeps. So you'll have other people who are mostly anti-war, right? All of a sudden they can't talk about it if it's Israel. And it's not because they agree privately, but they know that it'll just destroy their career. And so they're incentivized, even if it's just purely out of fear, to not overstep their bounds. I mean, we wouldn't be doing this if they didn't have corporate interest in it.
No. We really wouldn't be able to be doing this if AIPAC had to register as foreign agent.
Certainly not, which is it's completely insane. I'm very sympathetic to Jewish people who talk about, like your family going through the Holocaust, concentration camps. It's awful. And just like people who talk about the Armenian genocide in their history, like, I certainly think that there is a place for you in the United States, wherever. Yes, you have a right to exist. No, you don't have a right to the United States taxpayers propping up an ethno-state for you overseas. Like, those are very different issues, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about taxes for a second, because we here are very much supporters of the idea of modern monetary theory. That is something that, we are, proponents of.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about things, like, I'm always very careful not to say it's, tax dollars, because on the federal level, our tax dollars don't do anything. They don't go anywhere. There's nobody sitting in a room and counting up all the taxes they got in this year and saying, okay, this is how much we have. Okay, we can afford that vacation this year, right? Like, that's not how it works on a federal level. And I think this is one of the biggest issues that we generally have with libertarians, is it's almost like using things like that as an excuse to support austerity. And austerity is something that is, equated to murder in some cases, because a lot of people would be dead or will be dead. So that's where the problem is. So, like, I'm curious, economically speaking, when we talk about that, like, and what I say is, I don't want our collective resources supporting Israel. I don't want our collective resources doing anything. But I just generally avoid saying our, people's tax dollars, because it's completely unrelated. If we didn't pay federal income taxes, the same amount of money would still be going to Israel.
Which makes you wonder why we have federal income tax anyway.
That's a topic for another, like that I get behind getting rid of that crap.
Yeah. State
So
law-
it's very-
That's a very interesting perspective. I mean, I'm a hardcore proponent of Austrian economics. I don't want the money printer to go brr, I don't like inflation. And I worry that it's going to cause economic collapse, but I would certainly agree with you that I don't want any of our shared collective or otherwise resources going to support, what happens overseas. And I mean, it's like a big mess to untangle how the whole thing really does come together. How did we had this very, very simple constitutional document that was set together, by the framers a few hundred years ago. And I think that it's the best document that we have, but it didn't really work that well, did it? But it didn't really work, because we have all these undeclared wars.
Because we're not following it, right?
Yeah. So how did we get from point A to point B? And then it kind of brings, like, might makes right. And I don't.
We had 9/11 and the Patriot Act, which then basically got rid of our 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. And then ever since we've had the authorization for military force, the unauthorized AU authorized, the AUMA, whatever that one. So the president basically bypasses, and we don't have to deal with Congress, and he could just do whatever he wants. And it's truly insane.
Yeah.
Like, we've reached the point of, I don't even understand what's the point of having rules at all.
Right. I get what you mean, because it seems like they're essentially meaningless. Like the Constitution, they're like, yeah, but not really. You're like, but what do you mean, not really?
Right. Why does
Joe
Biden get to do that without having Congress? Congress is who authorizes spending. Congress is who authorizes war. Like, why are we in this?
This is one thing that I think libertarians are absolutely correct on. The American people, if in a very limited, if not an outright nil capacity, have a say on how our money is spent.
That's what it is.
And that is a big problem. And one of the biggest issues, as you know, on the political left is healthcare. And the constant talk on the political right is always, I don't want the government running our healthcare. And we agree. We don't want the government running our healthcare. What we want is the for-profit middlemen in between us and our doctors to cease to exist, because they don't have to exist. Now, I'm an advocate for a single-payer universal system. Now, that means government funded, but that means we are actually controlling how our money's being spent. That, to me, is the ultimate system. It's the only system that truly works around the world in developed countries that actually know what they're doing. No, I'm not talking about Canada. I'm not even talking about the UK. I'm talking about Australia. I'm talking about Japan. I'm talking about Germany. I'm talking about Scandinavia. Those places really have their shit together, and they subscribe to a very similar system. Now, could there be tweaks to it? Perhaps. But as far as I'm concerned, Aetna, Cigna, United, they have no reason to exist. None.
Yeah, like, what's the position that you have on that, like on universal health care?
Oh, I'm definitely not in favor of universal health care. but I'm not in favor of our current medical system. I think that one of the biggest problems we have is a giant, expansive regulatory framework that allows insurance companies to come in and engage in, government sanctioned monopolistic behavior. It's nearly impossible to go into business. Well, you can't as a private insurer. Like, what if you're like, look, I'm 25, I just want, insurance for like major accidents. And then I just want to pay out of pocket, and I'll just like write off, like they don't have to do a bunch of stuff or tests if I go in. You're not allowed to do that. And I think that people should be able to assume some amount of educated risk. And that's just not possible. And government has written it that way so that certain organizations can reap all of the benefits, and a lot of us can just get screwed and have crappy health care.
So you don't want a one size fits all, basically.
No, I don't want a one size fits all. I mean, so for example, like there are a lot of medical treatments that I just don't want. And I've recovered from Crohn's disease. Like I had a really horrific debilitating illness for about 7 years, and it's completely in what they would call remission now, but they almost removed my colon. It was a whole disaster. Mm-hmm. I've been hospitalized many, many times. I've had surgeries, and so I have been through, the system with private insurance, briefly with government insurance for a couple months when my insurance lapsed. Like it's a big mess to me, and I would like choice. So like in Thailand, for example, if you get sick in Thailand and you need to go to the hospital, you could pay out of pocket, and it might cost a couple $1,000 US dollars, because they don't have all of the bureaucratic garbage that we have in the United States. I don't believe they have single payer, but they might have some version of it that I'm not totally familiar with. But I know, like as a foreigner, you're not just totally screwed like you would be here in the United States.
Now that's a fair point, and I can take that into consideration. However, one of the big problems that we do have in this country, because of our completely corporate captured economy, mm-hmm. is the average person doesn't have $500 to rub together if they were, God forbid, in an emergency. And even the people that are working right now are not working, generally speaking, at jobs with wages that would permit them to even miss a week. We're in that situation where it becomes, well, you can't, and again, to a degree, I absolutely agree with this notion of, well, you can't put the pressure on small businesses to have to pay a living wage if their bottom line simply can't allow them to pay it. So with that being said, we have a serious problem with monopolies in this country. I am dead set against the worst of the worst mega corporations. I happen to believe that Walmart and the Walton family are the scrounge of human existence, as far as I'm concerned. They not only have destroyed working class America, particularly small businesses, mm-hmm. but they're also the biggest welfare queens in the United States. They do not pay their workers enough to live, and they get them on welfare on top of that, and yet they're the richest family in the country. So to me, I think there's got to be a happy medium there somewhere. Would you agree with that?
I think it's possible. I mean, the way I sort of triage my problems, so I'm just like a straight anarchist. I would like the complete abolition of all government. But if I have to pick one or the other, like what goes first, it would be the warfare state. And I don't think that would completely pay for single payer. I think we have some cultural health problems in the United States that need to be addressed.
We do.
Diet and stress as well. Oh, yeah. But I would much rather pay for people to get down here. Yeah, I would much rather pay for people to get well than blown apart. And I think we need to fix some of the bureaucratic layers. Like, I would never want the VA to represent healthcare, because that is like our single payer system, like model in the United States right now. Like, that's got to go. That would be, I think, a good like model or test for people who want to have single payers. Like, can you reform the VA and make that like your test case with a small population? So that would be the challenge that I would issue. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for middle ground and negotiation on this. If you take like a moderate libertarian position, or you just you could be an incremental anarchist, like I am, and I just want to shave off a little bit at a time, and let's shave where we agree, which is, like I'd rather people get, insulin than grenades.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's all compromises. So like I know people, libertarians, and they don't believe in public education. You don't believe in public education? That's fine. Like we don't have to argue about that to agree that there's a whole bunch of other stuff that we agree on.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the key thing. Like we can argue about how we want to allocate our general resources later. If we right now agree that we know for sure we don't want them being allocated how they're being allocated. And I think that's the key fight first. And I also think there's a lot of common ground when you talk about things like keeping people healthy.
Yeah.
When we look at things like big ag and big pharma and what they're doing with the monocropping and the monoculture so that small farmers can't exist, like every single thing that's happened in our food industry is the complete antithesis of like what would be like a natural progression of business. You know, you're literally paying farmers to not farm and you're screwing the environment and you're like all of this stuff. And so like those are things that I would think that libertarians would not want to be subsidizing.
Sure. Oh yeah, I don't want to subsidize any of that. Farm subsidies are just a hot mess. It's a complete waste of money. We pay farmers to grow corn and throw it away.
Right. Well, cattle. And then that's a whole other thing, like the whole beef thing, like, and you know, everything from bailing out big industries, whether it's the banks, whether it's everything. I feel like as long as people are willing to acknowledge that we have socialism for corporations and for the rich, and individualism for the poor. So, you know, when people say we should just let the businesses take care of themselves, but if that were the case, most of these businesses wouldn't have survived.
Right. Or they would still be small. They would be little rinky businesses. And that would be fine.
They wouldn't be these big conglomerate. You wouldn't have, you know, six companies owning 90% of the media.
Angela, let me tell you where we absolutely 100% agree. I wouldn't have bailed out the banks.
Yeah.
And if that means and if that means we went into an economic depression, that is the price you pay for allowing a system that isn't real, that is completely fake, and can just explode at any minute. It's like, is Bill Gates really worth $100 billion? Or has the system...
Like, has he earned that?
Yeah.
Has he worked so much harder than us that he's earned that money?
Has the system reached a point where the monopolization effect of what has transpired, mostly, if we're being fair, during the policies that Clinton implemented in the 90s that have allowed us to get to this point? You know, the trade deals... the Telecom Act, the worst of them all, which people still don't talk about to the extent that they should, is removing Glass-Steagall. If you are just allowing the complete takeover of corporate power within our government, so we constantly hear, you know, we're friendly with Tim Pool's people. Jen was recently on with fellow libertarian, though he calls himself an anarchist, Luke Rakowski. You know, his whole idea is, you know, blow it all to hell, because as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing to salvage at this point. But on the one hand, I would agree with that, but they keep framing it as the government, the government, the government. And I would say, yes, but you're missing the key ingredient, the government, because of corporate special interests. If you're going that route, you can't have one without the other.
It's a revolving door.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Totally.
It's like the lines have blurred. You know, and I think that this became very obvious to anybody who was paying attention when the Twitter files were released, and you saw the federal government actively co-opting this organization, using it as their misinformation enforcement wing. They behave that way with other industries as well. It's not just social media. And so when people get very triggered and think like, oh, I want to defend like every corporation, you know, like the typical like libertarian is tipping his fedora. A lady, like, he's not taking that into account. They use these banks to push their agendas as well.
One of the things about the Libertarian Party that I have a lot of respect for, even though you guys do not win elections, you do have members of the GOP, like I said, Justin Amash, Thomas Massie, and especially Rand Paul, that identify as libertarians, even though they are under the GOP bracket. With that being said, there is no question that there is a tremendous anti-war movement that is growing in this country. And I think the libertarians deserve the lion's share of that. That's even overlooking the progressives, because the problem with progressives is they can't get their shit together.
They're too caught up with their feelings.
Yeah, the libertarian movement is an extremely well-oiled machine. Granted, there are levels of extremism within that movement. Look at the president of Argentina.
Well, I mean, every group has their extremists. I'm just curious. So, what is going on with the libertarians right now, as far as like candidates and your primary situation? And because obviously that's not making mainstream news. What's going on there?
So we have a pool of candidates that are actively campaigning for the nomination. They're attending state conventions. So last weekend, for example, I was in Florida, and they were having debates at the Florida State Convention. So you've got Michael Rechtenwald, Mike Termott, Jacob Hornberger, Joshua Smith, Lars Mapstead, Chase Oliver, Charles Ballet.
You mean you're having an actual Democratic primary situation?
Sort of. So the way that
it's fascinating. I'm registered as a Democrat. We don't get to have a primary here. I'm in Florida, so yeah, continue. I'm fascinated by this whole process.
So the way that it works is, like you go to your state convention with your state party, you get elected to be a delegate to national. And then at national, everybody gets to vote on who they want to be the president and the vice president. So they're not a package deal, which can sometimes be a little disruptive and chaotic.
Is that based on your bylaws? Like that's just the way it is?
Yep, yeah, that's the way it is according to the bylaws. So at the state conventions, everybody's going to meet candidates. Candidates are traveling to meet potential delegates. You don't want to show up, announce you're running for president, or have been campaigning, online this whole time, but have never met any delegates, because we go just to elect that and to elect leadership. I'll be up for and as well, along with the rest of the board. So that's how it happens. But yeah, everybody's out there shaking hands right now, getting the message out. It's really a competition of who do we think is going to be the best messenger.
When's your convention? Like, when's your decision point?
It's Memorial Day weekend. So it's towards the end of May. It's in Washington, D.C. And the presidential election, if we keep to our schedule, is Sunday. And we likely will, because I'll have the gavel, and I'm pretty a stickler on it.
Yeah, that's good. Do you have a parliamentarian?
We do. We'll have a parliamentarian there. And I have to be pretty well versed in Roberts. I probably have a copy of it somewhere here.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I went to our state meeting, and it was the first time I ever really watched like a real parliamentarian, not this stupid nonsense we have here with our local party where I've never even heard him speak. No, I mean locally, no. And it's amazing. A real parliamentarian is very important. I say that seriously, like it really is. And it's the way, that's how the league stays so efficient.
Yep.
Their meetings stay on track, and they don't that's the whole, it's important. I mean, we say it jokingly here about, Joe Manchin and the parliamentarian, of course, impeded the Democrats from being able to do anything because the parliamentarian was so powerful that Joe Biden couldn't pass, $15 minimum wage because the parliamentarian.
Yeah. As chair, I have to know this book very well. I have to know this very well. I have to be able to use it and run a meeting. And we have a big joke, right? Like, oh, so-and-so, not a good libertarian, but boy, can they run a meeting. So it's like, you really need to be able to do both, right? Like be good at your job and also run a meeting. But it is important. I mean, otherwise things run way over. Your meeting gets chaotic. People just, hog the mic and act like fools.
And I noticed though, and not that I am one to harp on any sort of identity stuff, but none of the people are women. Are there any women that are running in the Libertarian Party?
For president?
Yeah.
I don't think we have any this term. We had our presidential candidate was a woman in 2020. So
okay. Yeah, where you been?
We're not this time. I mean, I'll be up for re-election. Karen Ann Harlow's our secretary. It's like the board has got quite a few women on it. Our secretary, Hannah Goodman, who is the chair of the Colorado Libertarian Party, is going to be running for vice chair. So if all goes well, in my opinion, you'll have 3 out of 4 officers who are women.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I definitely consider all things when I'm looking at candidates, but I have concerns about the concept of austerity. And only because, in my ideal universe, I would go live in the woods and be an anarchist and be completely happy and mind my own business and live and let live. I would. And I'd be very content that way because I feel like I'm privileged enough that it would work for me to do that. But unfortunately, I don't see that that's practical for most people. I feel like we have to have some semblance of societal infrastructure in place, like in order for people to just exist on this planet. And that's why. So it's like, in theory, I agree with it. In theory, I am as libertarian anarchist, get out of my business. I do not need that involved as can be, but I recognize that I like living amongst healthy, educated people, and I share the universe and coexist with other people. So that's really kind of what it comes down to for me.
I want prosperity over austerity. Like, to me, it's like you've got to like aggressively deregulate and let people make informed decisions about what, you know, they want to do for a living, how to run their lives. That includes things that social conservatives are not, you know, going to be so in favor of, you know, like sex work and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not out there championing it, you know, but it's also, you know, not my business to say what people need to do to earn a living. I want to get rid of the drug war. And I think that
We agree.
Yes.
Can we just like glasses? Why is it illegal to get your prescription tested over the internet? Like, this is just stupid stuff like that. Because we're propping up like a particular industry.
Yes.
Deregulate it. And then, you know what? It's not like you're not like, oh, well, I guess I can't afford to get my eyes checked this year because it's $80. No, it's like $8. You just go online, you pay on the website, you do like a test. You're like, you know, and then it spits out your thing and you buy another $8 frame on Amazon. And heaven forbid, like, I come across as though I worship at the altar of Jeff Bezos. But people need to buy stuff and you don't have a lot of money. And that's what that crap is there for.
Yeah.
So, you know, for me, it's like I want things to be affordable. I certainly wouldn't want to just put a bunch of austerity measures in and people can't like buy things and have comfortable lives. I want to, like, you know, do things in a certain way so that you can afford to live and you can feel like happy and comfortable. Like, I'm all about prosperity.
So do you support the idea of a living wage?
Oh, no, I don't. I don't support really like the idea of a universal minimum wage. From my perspective, companies that are going to pay you like crap should get shamed, you know, and they should not get our business. But I also think that the increasing minimum wage has pushed out youth workers, and it has made it harder for teenagers to get like part-time entry-level jobs. So like work at McDonald's on the weekend, you don't see that nearly as much. I had my first McDonald's job when I was 15, and it wasn't very much hours. I had to get a work permit, the whole thing. But now it's all adults.
Because that's all they can get. Like, that's the job that's available. And you've got people working there that are adults with kids working that and 2 other jobs just trying to stay afloat.
All right. So if you, and listen, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, because I think that there's many ways that one can go when it comes to the minimum wage. What I think is essential in this country, and this is also one of the big problems we've had for a long time, I am a huge advocate for tuition-free public college, but more specifically tuition-free trade schools. I think people have to learn a skill. I think that is the best way to advance a society, whether you want to learn how to weld, if you want to learn how to be an electrician, if you want to learn how to, you know, be a UAW worker on an assembly line building an automobile. As far as I'm concerned, I think that is the type of public good that I think most people can agree upon. We, as progressive-minded individuals and libertarians, no one wants to have to rely on the government for anything. You shouldn't have to rely on it. It should be the last resort of last resorts. But I also believe that the government should be working for us, not the other way around. And I think that that's the misnomer that people on the left have about libertarians, this idea of that we don't have to have any government. No, if we're going to have a government, it needs to work on behalf of the people. And right now, it does not. And so where do you stand as far as, like, learning a trade, learning a skill? Again, we're not here talking about, tuition-free college so you can go and get your liberal arts degree. But quite frankly, if you want to do that, there's nothing wrong with that either. However, we do have a serious problem in this country with people working with their hands, and that's something that has to change.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that I have contempt for academia. I hold it in contempt. I hold it in very low regard, and I think that if we had a big nationwide campaign to push people towards trade schools, you would have a lot of really happy blue collar workers with 6-figure incomes,
Great.
taking care of their families and feeling really good about themselves.
Yeah.
That would be great. Because there's this ugly stigma that, you know, school counselors and people in college admissions push on blue collar workers, where they make them feel like you're going to be like white trash if you're an electrician, or that's what poor people do. It's not. That's what comfortable upper middle class people do, who can afford to have 3 kids and take them on a family vacation and visit grandma and have nice presents for Christmas. Like but instead of that, we're going to push people to like major in gender studies and minor in a foreign language. And when that doesn't work out, double down, go to grad school and do it even harder. That's just complete like insanity to me.
Yeah. Well, it's a racket.
Yeah.
It's a racket. I mean, and that's, and I am somebody who is overly educated. Like that is definitely the thing. I mean, I only paid off my student loans like last year, finally paid off law school last year.
There is no question that academia in particular, the managerial class academia,
Yes.
they are without question, like to me, somebody like Deborah Messing is the face of the Democratic Party establishment. Like there is no question that what they represent is not, they do not represent regular people.
No.
They represent a very, very small microcosm of society. And unfortunately, they are the ones that sit on the boards at places like Harvard and Yale and, you know, Northwestern. Sorry, Jen.
Wait, you have a fan.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Rodwell.
Great to have you here.
Yeah,
Mama.
we've talked a lot about this lately, about the scam of higher education and what's going on with that, and how, what is it? They have like 20 different presidents, vice presidents, executives, chancellors.
And look, it's one thing if you're going to an Ivy League school, but as far as I'm concerned, you know, we don't even have these discussions anymore about where is the real value in, you know, for example, if you want to be a lawyer, you know, the best law school is not Harvard, even though they like to pretend that they are. The best law school in the United States by measures across the board is University of Michigan. And so if they are the best law school and they're a public education school in the state of Michigan, then that's where the encouragement needs to be. But the constant push in society is always, you have to go to the most prestige and the most expensive and this and that. And it's like, it's not obtainable to the average person. You have to be able to encourage people to go in a path that is going to allow them to not have to rely on the government in order to live. And being able to have tuition-free trade schools, if progressives and libertarians can come together on an issue when it comes to education, I hope it's that, because that is one that could diametrically change this country in a very positive way.
Absolutely. Oh man, let's talk about licensure. So I've been a paralegal now for 15 years. I do partner level work. I do not do paralegal work.
Right.
I come in, I work at law firms where the solo practitioner or a small firm where they're struggling, they have a heavy caseload. They don't have the expertise in a certain particular area. I come in and I do the whole thing, start to finish. I do the discovery, I do the motion work, I do the meet and confer, I do the mediation, I do the whole thing, I do the trial prep, I write the trial argument, I'll sit in trial, I'll do voir dire, I'll do cross-examine, the whole thing on a chart, and they can just read it off. There are attorneys who are so grossly incompetent in practicing. Like it's huge risk. People waste thousands of dollars. They get really screwed, and it's a licensure issue. So in California, which is where I used to live, you know, I didn't want to pay to go to law school. It's extremely expensive. You have to put your life on hold and incur a massive amount of debt, which is something, you know, we've sort of touched on a little here and there. So I just continued to do paralegal work, you know, worked my way up. I really enjoyed it. And then California has something called a law study program where you can just study under the supervision of an attorney and take the bar exam, and you'll be certified to practice in California after like 4 years of that. Now, the only problem is it's not transferable to other states. There's only 3 states in the country that have this program. So
Right.
I got ready to start the program. Then my husband and I were like, I think we're going to move to Texas. So I stopped. So I do the work that other people get charged $650 an hour for, that attorney literally just rubber stamps his name on. But I'm not allowed to do it outside of the state of California. Make it make sense. Like, that's completely insane. And were it not for my expertise, attorneys wouldn't even be able to take on their cases and do it because they're not competent.
But you realize though, like even if you were bar certified or whatever, you would still not necessarily have that transferable to any other state. It just depends. Like I'm licensed.
Oh, no, it would. I'd be able to take the test. I'd be able to take the
You can
bar
take
in
the
another state.
bar. Yeah, you could take the bar.
But not if you do the California program. Then you have to go to a law school and take
Oh,
the
I
bar.
see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
From my perspective, like a lot of the licensure issues that we have really keep people from getting the services that they could have that they need at an affordable rate, and from keeping people like myself from attaining upward economic mobility. Like,
And
I think
you know why though, right? It's totally just revenue. It's revenue for the states.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the biggest things. And the bars, the different bar associations are completely in lockstock with that.
100%.
And whether it's, and then they subsidize bribery or whoever, I don't even know who does what.
With colleges, corporations, and our government. They all are like, no. We'll all agree to that everybody has to pay this much to play.
Yeah. And they're all in on it, and then nobody else can get in.
Yep.
That's the thing. And if you were able to just go do that without all of those licensing steps, then why would anybody pay all those licensing fees if anybody could just go do that?
Right. The thing that I did on the side was I did unlawful detainer assistance for people who were in fights with their landlord. You know, and a lot of libertarians, their like heads explode. They're like, "Oh my gosh, you were helping people fight their landlord." They aggressively take the side of the landlord, and I'm like, "Well, settle down." You know, people are human beings, and they need help sometimes negotiating. And believe it or not, sometimes a landlord might screw someone over and do something dishonest. And technically, that's it's a gray area what I'm allowed to do. But like, let's be real. If I've been doing it for 12 years, you think I'm not going to give someone every single little thing that they can and arm them so that they can go into court and defend themselves? Of course I am, And,
Right.
And I just assume the risk because I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm responsible and I'm not going to give someone bad advice. But it is pretty outrageous that I can't just be licensed to give advice in my expert field.
Right.
Angela, one of the biggest, probably roadblocks, I would say, especially when it comes to, libertarians' hard line of deregulation, the environment is a huge problem because I think that there is, on the one hand, I think that there's an area that there is considerable crossover appeal. I happen to be, again, Jen, you have a completely anarchistic way of looking at this, but I really am an advocate for nuclear power. I think it is the only way that we can conceivably get off of coal and natural gas. The biggest issue that I have, particularly with hydraulic fracturing, which Trump that's the biggest issue I have with Trump getting back in the White House. He is a huge advocate for continuing the drilling around the country. And yet what you'll find is that when it comes to hydraulic fracturing, any of the people who stand to benefit from that or advocate for it or invest in it, they'll never allow a fracking well anywhere near their property. So I find it, obviously everything is hypocritical at that level. But where do you stand when it comes to the environment? I mean, again, we know the whole deal when it comes to the Green New Deal, but when it comes to clean drinking water, when it comes to
regulations for clean air and clean drinking water.
Where do the libertarians stand when it comes to the environment?
Yeah. I think that privatization and property rights helps a lot of it, a lot of the challenges. I want clean water. And I think that if an organization pollutes the water, they shouldn't just pay a fine to the government and keep polluting. They should get sued and probably shut down or punished in a way that's more than just a slap on the wrist.
Yes.
I think a lot of the fine systems that we have in place right now, they're like, oh no, $300 million. Pull out my checkbook and write it.
Yeah.
Doing it. And that's not okay. I think we need some major reforms. And I do think that it's not just more regulation. I don't think that regulation is the answer, because regulation at this point is just pay to play. It's just like, well, I can afford to, dump a bunch of oil on your seagulls, screw your seagulls, haha, baby seals. And that's gross. That's really gross. And it's a problem too when you have runoff from factory farms and people get sick because there's E. coli in the lettuce, and like that's just gross.
I would outlaw factory farming. I would outlaw it, not even a hesitation. I mean, that's how food gets poisoned.
Yes, disgusting.
It's everything. And again, it's not because we have so many more people to feed. It's how much more profit.
Yes, and that's the truth. And they get away with violations because, like you said, it's a pay to play. If these industries were actually held to regulations and those were actually enforced regularly, then we wouldn't have half the problems we have in whatever industry. It's that we know that there's rules, but rules are made to be paid to not have to follow.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I think factory farming is pretty vile. I'd be really careful about shutting things down in mass before I knew how much it was going to make the cost of food go up. That's my only concern. It's definitely not anything in support of factory farming.
Agreed.
What else? Air quality. I think that there are a lot of technological developments that are going to continue to make our air cleaner. And I think that we should allow those and we should not let regulatory capture stop them. So when I think about, regulations, like I'm probably thinking about something different than you guys might be. Like you're thinking about regulations to keep a system of checks and balances on Chevron and major corporations that would be polluting. I'm thinking of like, what is hindering new economic innovation that helps us get away from fossil fuels?
Can I answer that question?
Sure.
For 1,000, Alex, those corporations spend tens of millions of dollars on both political parties every year to get them to not touch a damn thing. That's the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's one where I'm curious what you guys think about this. I'm not in favor of intellectual property. I'm in favor of trade secrets. I think you certainly have a right to keep your secrets. If someone violates your agreement to keep it a secret, you can sue them. Not in favor of intellectual property. So I'm not in favor.
You know what? I don't have a real position on that. I don't think I've ever really given it that much thought to have a position.
We've never actually, I don't think we've ever had a conversation.
And it's funny because in law school, obviously that is such a specialized niche. And the people that do that, they're all like engineer, wonky, nerdy science people that go into patent law and all that. But I don't know. I'd be open to. I'm definitely
That's
open.
What drives up the cost of all of the medicines.
Oh yeah, but I think that other countries do a lot better job of protecting their citizens from being raped by those same pharmaceutical companies that we are allowed to be raped by.
You have the FDA, and they're a little like crazy circus that you have to go through, unless it's COVID shots, and then they'll just send that right through, and there's no checks and balances there. But you'll take years to develop something, and you have to pay all of this money to get it approved by the FDA. Yeah. And then you have a giant patent, like guarding you for however many years until that expires. And it makes the cost for the consumer just like skyrocket.
Yeah.
What was his name? Martin Shkreli, like the guy who.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no. Oh, I agree. Yeah, I'd be very open to that. I don't know enough about intellectual property law.
Yeah,
to make like any valid points, but I'm very open to that. Like I have no position on that actually.
Cool. I would love to make drugs affordable by just taking that away from them. And then it's just a competition. Guard your secrets. And if you don't guard your secrets, you're out of luck.
Yeah. I'm cool with that. I mean, I know as it is now, like it's ridiculously long amount of time before anything can even be made into a generic.
And the same with technological innovations. Because, the other thing that companies do is someone will get a patent to something, and then someone else will come, some large company will come and buy that out and then sit on it and never use it. And so you've got, all these different models of electric cars that were stalled out and delayed because somebody bought the patent and sat on it. It's like there's so many like cool things happening just in the world, and because of intellectual property, we never find out.
We never find out. Yeah, I'm open to that. I don't do bans or mandates. I wasn't with COVID. I'm not with any of that. I don't believe in bans or mandates. I'm extremely civil libertarian. I just very much am a bleeding heart and believe in a social safety net. But when it comes to people doing what they want to do and consenting adults, I have no, I don't even want to be having those discussions. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm not in. So like, I'm fine with the Second Amendment. I'm fine with all the amendments. I don't care. Live and let live.
Although
For consenting adults. Well,
Right.
if it involves children, then that's everybody's business.
this kind of brings everything full circle, because you've said that because of the fact that we haven't heeded our most intelligent founding father. I know people say it's Thomas Jefferson, but it's really Ben Franklin. You know, when he says, if you're willing to give up if you value security,
You're willing to sacrifice your security.
if you're willing to sacrifice your liberty for security, you deserve neither.
Yeah.
And I think we're living in a time now, especially post 9/11, where people were immediately willing to give up their security.
Well, I actually read the Patriot Act. I read it when it came out. Most of Congress did not. They signed it anyway. They just signed it. They didn't
You don't
even
think
read
Hillary Clinton read the Patriot Act?
None of them read it. I remember that very clearly. And I remember reading it, and I was going through it with a highlighter. I'm like, well, there goes our Fourth Amendment. Check.
So insane. Yeah. So
And
nuts.
then you could read it. And then you had Obama extend it. And all of it, which is why when people are like, somehow the Democrats are better, I'm like, not for civil liberties. I don't know what you're talking about. So when it comes to that stuff, I'm always going to side live and let live. Always.
The one thing that liberals don't like to hear, and I make this as clear as day as I possibly can. If you look at the history of wars in this country, overwhelmingly, not by a little, but by a significant margin. In fact, I think if you take the worst president of my lifetime, and no, it's not Donald Trump, it's George W. Bush. If you take him out of the equation.
See, you think so too. He was horrible.
Yeah. If you take Bush out of the equation, almost every war, with the exception of, I believe, the Spanish-American War, they've all been started by Democrats. All wars throughout history have been started by Democrats. William McKinley, I believe, did start the Spanish-American War. And if you take him out, you could look by every line item. I believe that, again.
But Democrats were Republicans,
yes.
and Republicans were Democrats.
I would say, it's easy to say that Andrew Johnson is the worst president we've ever had, and I certainly wouldn't go against that argument. But the most effectual worst president we've ever had, in my opinion, bar none, is Woodrow Wilson. There is nobody
100%.
worse. There is nobody worse.
He is the worst. Absolutely.
And
look, you found another history dork to sit there and agree with you about that.
But here's the difference between Andrew Johnson and Woodrow Wilson. Andrew Johnson is regarded as one of the worst presidents. There are people who think Woodrow Wilson is one of the best presidents.
Yes.
And that's
because they've heard of him. People are like, when people ask, who is your favorite president? Most people are like, who have I heard of? They're like, George Washington. They're like, Ben Franklin.
Oh, my favorite president, without question, is Teddy Roosevelt. Like, he's number one.
Do you know mine?
None.
Exactly. Because as I say, that's like asking me to choose a venereal disease.
Yeah, I would have picked Martin Van Buren. I think he was president for a very short period of time.
Martin Van Buren.
Well, no, that's
Isn't that the
no.
the Van
You're
Buren
wrong.
boys,
You're
the
wrong.
Van Buren boys.
You're thinking of William Henry Harrison. He was president for like 20
He
days.
was the very shortest. Yeah.
Yes.
He got sick at the inauguration.
He gave like a speech in the rain for like 3 hours.
And he got sick at the inauguration and then died.
Yeah,
well,
crazy.
you know what? That's the thing. See, some of those wives' tales are true.
So I guess from your perspective, and again, this is one of the pillars of the Libertarian Party, you believe in ending the Fed. You believe that there is no point in having it.
See, and I can get with that too. I'm telling, like, there's a lot of things. Like, I would be able to sit down with you and we could get a lot of things done. And then there would be a lot of things where we wouldn't agree. But the thing is that I very much believe in the majority rule concept. So even if it's not something that I agree with, if it's like most people want X, then I'm going to support X, even if I personally might like Y. You know what I mean? Like, so I am very much of the mindset that we need to do with what most people want at least in a democratic concept.
Do you think there's like a limit though? So like vaccine mandates for me.
Yeah, no. Because now you've crossed into here. Okay.
Okay. Nice. That's the limit then. That's helpful.
Yeah, now you've crossed over in here. What I'm talking about is when we're talking about just regular policies, things that are within this, right? All of those things, whether it's our choice, our reproductive freedom, are things that we just all clearly agree on as people that do not invade other people's personal space. Okay. So that's where I am with that. So like that, I mean, and I knew exactly what you were going to say when you said that, like, what's the hard line is it cannot invade on someone else's civil liberties.
Angela, you believe in overturning Citizens United?
I don't have a strong opinion about overturning Citizens United.
That to me, that's a red line.
I mean, well, except it was already bad. I mean, like, and I see where you're coming, because people think that's the be all end all. And even if you overturn that, we were still had a whole bunch of corporate force.
Well, sure, no, I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. That's not going to solve the problem.
It's a step in the right direction.
So what? Okay, so we have our friend, you don't like my music. He's very, very, liberal left, and that's fine. Why do you believe in ending the Fed? Why do you believe that that's necessary instead of
the Fed props up the warfare state. The Fed makes it possible for us to arm the Israeli government so that they can turn Palestine into a glass parking lot. It's what allows us to prop up the war in Ukraine and be in a proxy war with Russia, bomb weddings in Afghanistan, regime change in Libya, the whole thing. It's the Federal Reserve allows it to happen. If we scale back to just the Department of Treasury, where they printed money and coin there and didn't just print things into oblivion, and they were just not part of our government technically, and they could do whatever the hell they want. If it was just Department of Treasury, it would be so much more chill. More chill.
My stance when it comes to printing money is simply this. It's like a clogged valve. The money that gets printed goes into the hands of the very rich and powerful few, and it never circulates through society the way that it's supposed to. So when people say that we have to, the way that it should be described is we have to unclog the drain, because that's what's happening. That is the reason why our dollar is being devalued, if you will, as often is said on the libertarian and the populist right, that the value of the dollar is not there. Well, it's easy to see why. If we do not unclog that drain, then there is no point. Because
you don't like my music. Who creates the money without the Fed would be the Treasury.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
just within the Constitution.
It's called the United States Treasury. It exists. It existed before the Fed. It was there.
Friend of the show, Danny Wyndham. Again, this is the big line between the left and the right when it comes to economics and this idea of, can you actually, can printing money be controlled without increasing inflation? And as I often say, yes, it can, but in its current construct, the money is not working its way through society.
Right.
And that, to me, I think is where we could have a meeting of the minds as far as printing money if we did have a system that worked on behalf of people. So when everyone on the right is saying, you can't print any more money. If you print more money, it's going to be
That's not how this works.
No, there's no point, because if you don't unclog the drain, it won't matter when you start printing money again, you still have the same problem in place. And that, I think, is the thing that we really need. As sort of where the libertarians and progressives, I think, can really come together. We absolutely agree on higher education when it comes to learning a skill. There's no question that is a crossover. We agree that the environment should be protected, not this idea that the world is ending tomorrow.
No, and I agree it shouldn't just be slaps on the wrist. I actually think that that some of these people should be held criminally responsible.
Sure, 100%.
Prosecuted, and not just by people like Steve Donziger. It should be happening from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Do you believe that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney should be in The Hague?
Hague or Gitmo. Hague or Gitmo.
All right,
We're
but
on the
you're
same
on the
side.
same. Well, Gitmo shouldn't even exist. And
It shouldn't exist.
Was it that President Obama that had said he was going to close down Guantanamo Bay? Yeah. And did that happen? No. No, it did not happen. In fact, there's still people there.
Hague is fine. Hague is fine. Prison.
But you agree we're dealing with war criminals.
100%. 100%.
Like every president in my lifetime, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, I do believe is a war criminal. Yeah. And I don't say I agree with him on foreign policy and didn't do stuff I didn't like, but I don't think he did. I don't think he committed war crimes. We'll have to have Margaret Kimberly on to further discuss, but I don't think so.
No,
the rest of them to me are all war criminals.
Angela, this has been a great conversation. Even though we don't agree on everything and we're not supposed to.
No.
Yeah, as we often say, as you like to say.
I'd be very happy to work with you on getting a lot of things done.
Yeah.
I love it.
You know what? I
agree
really
with
would. I have no problem with that. I don't need people. And you agree to keep people's hands off of everyone else's uterus, yes?
I don't. With the Libertarian Party doesn't take a position on abortion.
As well, you should
Yeah.
see, and therein is how it's supposed to be. That's what I said. We shouldn't even be discussing it.
Angela, and final thoughts before you go. Can you talk about, even though there hasn't been, let's say, libertarian elected officials in the Libertarian Party, can you talk about the libertarian effect that is in the political arena today, especially when it comes to civil liberties and the anti-war movement?
Absolutely. I mean, one of our biggest jobs is to push the Overton window in the direction of individual rights and liberty. And that's what we do. We're there to introduce bold ideas and to hold people's feet to the fire, to be early adopters, and to make it okay for people in other political parties and positions of influence to say, let's do that. Let's do the thing. Let's work towards freedom.
It's not. It's not like you think that your candidate is winning the presidency.
Let's end on the highest of high notes, Angela. Free Julian Assange.
Absolutely. Free Assange. She's got a court date February 20th and 21st. So it's a great time to reach out right now. Reach out to your representatives and tell them to sign on to the letter of support that Thomas Massey and I believe it's even the squad, they're working together on it. So
well, my representative is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, so I don't think she'd be amenable to that. Well.
Hey, she ran against Debbie in 2020 and she did pretty well, all things considered. So let's find ways to bring each other together, because Jen and Debbie are both in the Democratic Party.
Isn't that hilarious?
That is wild.
And yet Debbie may be, if she's not the biggest warmonger in the Democratic Party, she's right at the top. So
she's trying. Yeah.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Angela. It was so nice to meet you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
Have a great night. So guys,
I love how everybody in there, they're like, as for this, you know what? If you are really interested in the libertarian platform and stuff, they have it all on their webpage, and you could see about it. And there's a lot of stuff I don't agree with them on, and there's a lot of stuff I do agree with them on. But when you accept the concept of democracy and a majority rule concept, that I'm okay with other people expressing their opinions and
Danny,
ideas.
Here's what you need to understand, and thank you very much for the $10 as well.
Absolutely, we got to go back and go through some of the comments.
And so, what I think is important for people to understand, and
you know, Danny, that I'm an MMT girl, and you know that I understand this, but I don't feel like it is necessarily my job to school all of our guests on modern monetary theory. I point it out, I bring it up. I always make sure to make my comment about tax dollars, and I do that to put it out there. But I don't really feel like it's my responsibility to educate her about MMT. I mention it.
But I think it's important, because this is the difference between the way that we would approach it versus how Steve would approach it. I think you have to be able to build.
Steve would have just lost his shit.
I think if you really pay close attention to the way the conversation happened this evening, we found a lot of common ground. Now, of course, we disagreed on stuff. There's no question.
But let's say she and I were sitting in a room and we were working on getting stuff done. We'd be able to get a lot of different things done.
There's definitely a lot of crossover, and that's where guys like,
especially dealing with corporate monopolies and all sorts of stuff that is impeding everybody. We don't necessarily. She and I don't have to agree on the solution, but we can both recognize and stop the problem.
And you don't like my music. Here's where I actually disagree with you. The problem with this stance is that they don't take a stance on it, meaning they don't want the government involved in telling a woman that she can't control her body.
And here's the thing. I know that, you know what? I see what you're saying. But as somebody who truly does believe that this shouldn't even be on a platform and has written issue statements, I don't write about it. I don't want to take that. To me, that is just part of my civil liberties and just individual rights. So their whole position, the entire Libertarian Party position, is about civil liberties. It's the name of them.
Yeah.
So I assure you that the people in the Libertarian Party support a woman's reproductive freedom, because that was founded in our civil liberties.
And if there is one reason above all others, you can throw everything else out the window when it comes to why having camaraderie to a degree with libertarians is necessary. They are truly the only political faction that is anti-war, full stop.
And organized and on more ballots than the Green Party. And they just seem to have their shit together a lot more. They have a lot more influence. They're a lot bigger of a party. And so it's important to cross-pollinate with them.
Bingo, Chris. 100%. You plant the seeds. You make them recognize. There were things
That's what I'm trying to do.
if you were to tell me that the chair of the Libertarian Party would admit many truths tonight that sound populist left, you would not have thought that going in. But she did agree on a lot of we're fighting for.
And,
now, she's not all the way there on economics.
And she doesn't have to be. But she would agree. But like I got her to agree with, she agrees with the majority rule concept. That's the concept.
I got news for you. You don't like my music. Leaving it up to the states is actually working.
And the truth is, it really is supposed to be that way in our Constitution.
And it's working. Now, the only reason it's not working, and I'll give you a good example, is in the state of Indiana, which is Alabama of the North.
I used to live in Indiana. You know that I lived there for 6 years.
In Alabama, see how it's just
actually
like
no,
that.
5 years. Sorry.
So the problem in Indiana is that the state legislature, which is completely red, decided for the people that we are not allowing abortion in this state. Instead of allowing it to go to a vote with the people. It worked in Ohio. It worked in Kentucky. You know, there's surrounding states, and of course in Illinois.
But that's what they did here. They made the law here, and now we go around it.
Correct. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to pass in the state of Florida, just like it passed in other places.
You know where I used to work in Indiana was for the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, and our office was connected through an underground tunnel to the State House. And we would always, like I was often over there. That's how I met Governor Evan Bayh. And so I am extremely familiar with the Indianapolis legislative state house there. But yeah, it's very red, and it's definitely,
But also the other thing about Indiana that you have to remember is that Indiana, even more so than a state like North Carolina, Indiana is an extremely socially conservative state. And due to that fact, they actually do believe, and this is always the biggest difference in why I always find more favorable points of view with the libertarians than I ever would with conservatives, social conservatives that is because they actually do believe in the government controlling what you think. That is something that religious conservatives never want to admit, but it's the truth. This is why they actually don't believe in free thought. They don't believe in learning these concepts that make sense. They believe in what their Bible tells them, even though this is my Bible. And in this Bible, it actually says that the separation of church and state shall not be infringed. And so by that measure, I think that that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, social conservatives don't believe that. And that's a big problem, which is why with libertarians, there is that considerable crossover in important areas.
And again, when I meet them and they really are more like anarchists, it makes a lot more sense to me.
Okay. We have to cover Bill Maher. We have to cover this
and just so you guys all know, I don't want to do this. I don't want to sit here and listen to this. I've avoided listening to it. I haven't seen it. I am so sick of watching people ooze white entitlement, and the fact that I'm going to have to sit here and endure this just really
It's only a
sucks
minute and a half, so
I hope it is, because you do them and they're long.
Colin, cue it up, please. I want to pull it. I want to
retch.
Stop. But this is okay. So
what's that?
That's the Kari Lake story. We'll get to that.
Do we have to talk about her?
We do have to talk about
what happened.
They tried to bribe her,
which
is very interesting.
They try to bribe everybody.
Yeah, apparently. Colin, can you drop it down?
Isn't there a way we could do it?
I think so, but I'm not 100% sure how to do it.
Which one?
Bill Maher.
Oh, drop it down.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So Bill Maher was doing his new rules the other night and going over all the reasons why such and such should be this way, such and such should be that way.
I can't.
But his take on this story is so bad.
What story are we talking about?
So bad.
What story?
You know.
I'm so unhappy.
This literally probably made every super Israeli Zionist cream in their pants, big time.
I'm prophylactic.
A terrorist organization in the Middle East that treats women like slaves invaded Israel last October and shot hundreds of young people at a music festival in the desert. And now America's streets are full of parades in support of the shooters, led by the exact kind of people who would be at a music festival in the desert.
Is this guy out of his fucking mind? That we're out there supporting the shooters, not the innocent Palestinian people. He immediately goes to, they're all pro-Hamas.
Because he is a moron that is an Islamophobe and a racist, and he sees the Palestinian flag as a terrorist flag because he sees the Palestinians as lesser. And he does so because he's a bigot, which is why I am like disgusted sitting here and listening to this. The fact that he's comparing what was happening there with Coachella is so fucking absurd, you moron. I just cannot.
That's the literal standard for involuntary commitment, when you're a danger to yourself. I mean, the NRA are bad, but after a school shooting, they don't march against schools.
Okay, let's address this because this is true. JD Party Hat is right. It's been debunked. Hamas did not kill the majority of those people.
It was actually the IDF.
Yes, that were just randomly shelling buildings. Because here's the thing, and I thought about this very concretely the other day. Let's say hypothetically, I'm willing to concede that let's say there's 100 Hamas fighters living in the basement of the Al-Shifa hospital. They're down there, and I know they're down there. Let's just say hypothetically that I agree that they're down there. And let's just say that there's one baby on a ventilator upstairs. And you said to me, I could take out 100 of them, but I'm killing the baby. I'd still say no. If you can't come up with a better way, then not only are you a pathetic military, but you don't deserve to go get those targets. And if that's not, so I don't care that their reason is that there were people there. I don't care.
And we have heard time and again, for years and years and years, that the Israeli military was the most precise, sharpest nails military in the world.
I don't need to know about Islam any more than I need to know details about all sorts of sects of Christianity. I know that all religion, when taken to the extreme, is psychotic. And
like murdering innocent people and their children.
Let me tell you something, okay? When I was growing up, and to some extent throughout my life, we referred to my cousin who lives in Jerusalem with her family as the crazy Jews. They're crazy Jews. All they do is breed and study Torah.
Yeah, kind of like what I experienced.
Right. They're fanatics. They're crazy. Okay. And not just because they breed and study Torah, but because their ideas are off the fucking wall. Okay. Because when you get to religious zealots, you're dealing with people that don't accept reason and science. So I don't care what your fantasy novel is. I don't care whether it's the Quran. I don't care if it's the New Testament. I don't care if it's the fucking Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's fantasy.
And the problem,
no, you're comparing ridiculousness. So are some religions more ridiculous than others? Yes, I do think so. I think Scientologists are off the wall. I think Jehovah's Witnesses are wackadoo. I think certain religions are more ridiculous than others. But at the end of the day, you're arguing about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin because they're all stupid when you're talking about things that discount reason and science. So
you're just a crazy person.
So, and I am, and ironically, I'm sitting here and saying this while watching one of the people that I looked up to my whole fucking life based on his opinion about religion.
I looked up to him
based on his opinion about religion and keeping things secular. He was like, to me, he was like one of the patron saints of atheism for me. So the fact that I'm sitting here and watching him be such an Islamophobic bigot, as if somehow, and don't start with me about like, oh, have you read the Quran? No, haven't. Read the Bible, took classes on the New Testament, took an entire semester on the book of Job. So I know.
Book of Job.
So what I'm saying is I know enough about religion in general to know that they're all whack. So don't even go there. My people have to wear fringes on the outside of their clothes and let their hair grow like that. What the hell?
As Bill Maher, the Bill Maher who didn't get his mind right, who actually thought for himself back in the day,
the irony of this
is that life is hard enough as it is to come up with ways to fuck with yourself. That's why he was great at one time.
And by the way, Religulous was really good. It was
great movie.
The far left's new crush is the Houthis. Up until a week ago, everyone on TikTok thought a Houthi was what you get when someone hits your elbow. Ow! You gave me a Houthi. Damn. And the Houthi slogan is, God is great, death to the U.S., death to Israel, curse the Jews, and victory for Islam.
Yeah,
Could you blame them with what we've been doing to them?
Can we pause and talk about the Houthis? And I'm reluctant to call them the Houthis because that is a small sect of, I think it's like called Allah Islam, Allah, whatever the name of their political party is in Yemen. But we are talking about one of the, if not the poorest country
In the world.
Well,
Yeah,
it's like
Yemen is-
them and Haiti, or like, depending on which hemisphere, but like Yemen, and we've been committing a proxy genocide against them since 2014, essentially via Saudi Arabia. And now those people who are, let me tell you something about those people, the resilience and the strength and the fortitude of the Yemeni people is off the charts. And so when they are doing something to protest a genocide, we just bomb them some more. And this motherfucker is sitting here and making it be like, yeah, God is great, death to the US, death to Israel, curse the Jews, and victory for Islam. Okay,
They're the people that are killing them.
Yes. And by the way, people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and people that want to keep passing resolutions that say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, you are the reason
Getting this.
that they say curse the Jews, because you are the ones that are consistently conflating Judaism with Zionism. And so these people who do not have access, a lot of these people, to television and internet, they don't have the access to information. So their only knowledge is that Israel is the Jews, and that is who is oppressing their people. That's all they know, and has been doing so for the better part of 75 years. So
Like, comment, and subscribe. So naturally, when the college kids heard that slogan, they said, please stop, you had me at death to the U.S.
We often talk about how bad the economics in this country have gotten over the years. Bill Maher is a boomer. He's almost 70 years old.
Yeah, no, he's totally.
This is a guy who went to Cornell at a time when Cornell cost, I believe, about $5,000 to $10,000 a year to go to that school. Do you know how much Cornell costs today? Over $60,000 a year. And if we were adjusting it for inflation, college at Cornell today would probably be about $20,000 to $25,000 a year. So it just goes to show you that he is living in another universe.
But can we stop covering it? Because I feel like the last time I had to sit here and talk about him was when he made the declaration that nothing smart ever happened until white people existed in the 1600s, and that white people, Western white people, are the reason that we have things like democracy.
This was so, and it's not over yet, but this is so, like, this isn't even,
so ridiculous.
This isn't even partially correct. This is 1,000% incorrect across the board. There is nothing he has said in almost 2 minutes that suggests that anything he has said is correct. It isn't. It's completely wrong.
Insane that we're cheering for the terrorists now. It's also insane to think that
I love Queers for Palestine. I met a whole bunch of Queers for Palestine.
this would ever come out well, right?
That's something that they do very handedly, is they do what's called, they call it pink washing. I'm not big on using like terminology like that, but basically the premise is that Zionists will use LGBTQ rights as somehow showing that Israel is an actual democracy versus the Palestinians who don't support LGBTQ rights, which, by the way, that's not true. So that's just not true. It's just not true. Are there some radical Islamic Palestinians that probably are opposed to that? I'm sure there are.
What about the Israeli IDF that literally decimate, pillage, and destroy innocent people and then hold up their LGBTQ flag? I think I'd rather be on that person's side. Queers for Palestine. At least that's where I stand.
I'm telling you, I met a bunch of Queers for Palestine. They were nice.
They're probably decent people. But according to Bill Maher,
we had to. So when I was at the march in DC, this was really funny because I'm with my friend who is, I guess, technically would be considered a Queer for Palestine, although I wasn't really thinking of it that way. But we're there, and it's her and me, and her wife and child are at home down here in Florida, and we're up there. And across I don't know how far, you guys, this was the most crowded, crazy thing. There was however many hundreds of thousands of people there. And she sees this sign that says queer mom for Palestine. She had to meet this person. So we then, and I'm glad that I didn't have any little like children with me, because we had to then drag through like mosh pit level of people to get over to meet that section of the people. And it was a whole segment of Queers for Palestine. And it was, I don't see what the contradiction is.
If you want to see just how real this movement is, that people want to pretend it's not happening, that people still think this is about Trump versus Biden, that is not the story of the day, and it's never going to be. This is going to be a year unlike any other. And you know how I know?
How do you know? Because
Nancy Pelosi finally got her comeuppance at a very ritzy fundraiser, because apparently Nancy Pelosi hasn't actually stepped away from politics. She's still running the show. She just has her. I'm not
None of these people should get a moment apiece.
Yeah,
I feel bad for Chuck Schumer's neighbors.
Like what I find funny is that there are people in the Democratic Party, bubble, if you will, that actually believe that Hakeem Jeffries is the person leading the Democratic Party. No, it's still Nancy
He's there
Pelosi.
At the pleasure of Nancy Pelosi.
1,000%. So she says, well, again, like I said, I'm not going to get myself into trouble, but you all know what I'm thinking. So
don't.
Here we go, guys. This is getting very, very interesting now.
How long is this?
And Pelosi did not like this at all.
Nancy Pelosi, you are complicit in the Israeli crime of genocide. I'm an Iraqi refugee, and I watch your government you represent kill 1 million of my people. You killed 70,000 Afghans, and now over 30,000 Palestinians have died due to your complicity. We demand an end to the Zionist occupation of Palestine. We demand an end to the 17-year-long brutal siege of Gaza to be lifted. We demand an end. End the occupation now. 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 Free Palestine.
Good for her. Seriously, good for her, because that was probably like at least a $500 a seat gathering, which is why you can't get large protest groups into things like that. So when I see an individual doing that, when you guys see something like that and you're like, why is she alone? Because she probably, or someone gave her a ticket, or she had to pay to get in there, which is why those types of politicians like Nancy Pelosi don't do events that don't require high cost to get in. They're not going to do it without a high cover charge, because then they know that the riffraff is going to come in, and the riffraff could have things to say.
What do you think? Again, it also speaks to we know where Pelosi stands, but you think about the people that are sitting there and the way that they just pretend like this is not happening, the way that they pretend that there isn't this high-level protest of the activity that's going on, that they just want to pretend that it's not really happening. It is happening. This is a genocide, and there is no getting around this. And the first person who decides at a high level, like an RFK, that this is a genocide and it's got to stop, because we both know that Trump and Biden are not going to move on this issue, then that's where the real change is going to come from.
And be aware that while I also am not somebody who, I've always been pretty anti the idea of single issue voting, it's a deal breaker for me.
It would be for me too.
It's a deal breaker. It's just a deal breaker. And the fact
obvious.
that Trump would or would not be doing the same thing, hypothetical.
And not only that, but remember this, and this is why it has.
And I'm not voting for that douchebag either.
There's a whole, like anytime there's war, there are so many profound, after effects that come from it. But the after effect of what this is going to represent is weighted in generations now. And on top of everything else, this is where the stoking of anti-Semitism growing larger in the United States comes from. It comes from this, period. Justify any of this activity. And on top of everything else, they're pretending like it's not happening. How many more marches on Washington is it going to take?
Well, it's, they could act like they're pretending it's not happening, but behind closed doors, they absolutely know it's happening. And Honestly, other than I do feel bad for Chuck Schumer's neighbors, because I do. They've been out there with pots and pans like every day at 6 a.m. banging and doing shit.
Yeah, but he lives he lives in a very wealthy neighborhood in DC. So
Doesn't mean that other people want to be disturbed at 6 o'clock in the morning outside their brownstone.
You know what?
But that sucks. And I got to tell you, if I were one of his neighbors, I'd be furious.
I would be too.
And I want that for him. I think all of these people that are in power positions should not have a moment of peace when they are in public, or if you're on a public street in front of their property and you're out there during legitimate times of protest, all power to you, man.
If you think that's the only one,
they should not get 5 seconds of mental peace.
If you think that's the only one, how about the doppelganger, if you will, or the UK equivalent of Nancy Pelosi, Angela Rayner? She got her own comeuppance today as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Johnny. And look, team side's going to save the world. That's why us three are up here. But
the change in this country has come when you take a place and asking and demanding for ceasefire. I lost my family in Gaza. Just a second, I want to show you my mom. I lost my family in Gaza. If the ceasefire is taking place,
Just say you count yourself as a feminist. What kind of feminist are you?
I lose my member. I need my mom. That's the only thing I need.
Where's your voice,
Let me finish. I need my mom. Why are you not demanding for a ceasefire?
15,000 women and children dead, Angela Rayner, and you tout yourself as a modern day feminist? I don't think so.
thank you.
Women having to use scraps, tents for sanitary towels. Where's your voice, Angela? Call yourself a feminist?
Thank you.
I really don't think so.
Jonathan Reynolds, you
Born
talk about
raising genocide! Born
talk about
raising
power,
genocide!
you
You
had a
should be
chance to
ashamed
vote
of
on
yourself,
the ceasefire
Angela
bill.
Rayner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Your vice chair of
Thank
Labour
you.
Friends of Israel. Your friendly
Thank
Israeli
you.
president said he was waging,
You've
this
made
country
your
was
point.
waging
Thank
a
you.
war against barbaric jihadists who wanted
Thank
to
you.
take
You've
over
made your
Europe.
point.
Jonathan
Thank you.
Women
Reynolds.
dead every day, Angela. 2 women dead every day. 25,000 people dead, Angela, and rising.
Shame!
Where's
Shame!
your voice?
Shame on all of you!
Shame on all of you. Absolute shame. You say you shame. You support the genocide. You're funding genocide. 25. No, you abstained from the vote to get on your feet. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on you all. And get your hands off her as well.
Hands off me! You're not arrest me! Ow! Your hands off me! You're off me! You're hurting me! You're hurting me! No, don't get off me! No, don't get off me! Don't hurt me! Get off me! You're hurting! You're wasting my wrist! You're breaking my wrist! I didn't say it! You're breaking my wrist!
Thank you.
But the protests are definitely not stopping. People are getting interrupted left and right. All panel discussions, people are getting interrupted left and right.
Thanks, Travers. That's cute. You know that. You know, if anything, you should have been proud.
Travers,
You should have been proud.
do it. Travers, we were just talking about who's the lady in Parliament in the UK, the Irish woman with the long red hair and the bangs that got up and gave she stood her ground.
Gray or something.
I don't know, but I like her. She's
Yeah,
feisty.
no, she's great. She's great. Dorian.
Feisty Irish
Dorian?
woman.
Yes.
I don't know, but anyway, that's what I'm talking about.
They're not going to put it on us.
Meanwhile, I don't see women in this country other than Rashida Tlaib standing up and doing anything.
Yeah.
So it's women, and I agree. You cannot in any way
Claire
call
Daly.
yourself.
There you go, Sid. Right there.
Yes.
Claire Daly. That's it. Thank you.
I dig her.
Yes.
But you can't
How can you
say.
not dig the Irish?
But what that woman right there was saying is very accurate.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot say that you are a feminist and not be standing up right now with what's going on. You just can't. You just can't. These women, again, I was watching a woman carry around her dead child because she didn't know what to do with his body after she watched him get dead. So that, to me, when I think of that, it's just infuriating to me. So you don't get to be a feminist if you're not fighting for all women. And that is just, and the sanitary issue is significant. I know people are, don't really want to think about those things, but you have 1.something million displaced people that have no access to sanitary products. You know how many women have now given birth in this situation?
Unfortunately,
They're walking around. They're pregnant women that haven't been able to have prenatal care in 3 months that are like just stuck with this.
Very funny. You don't like my music. I'll tell you where.
Are they? No, but you know what? At least Claire I can pronounce. Those friggin' Irish names are ridiculous.
And Metal, here's the bottom line about Alex.
So upsetting.
She showed you her true colors the other day when she goes on with the two
Barbie and Barbie.
And I looked them up.
Barbie and Barbie.
You want to know what their claim to fame is? Apparently, they're part of. I think they're part of like some like home design network show or something like that, or like that was their thing. And then I know that there was like again, she went on with people she didn't need to go on with.
She looked like Barbie dolls. Well, but that's her just spreading her image, spreading her brand.
That's a good nickname, Sid. A Wall C. Yeah, that's
so unfortunate.
Yeah,
I actually don't think present should be an option. I don't understand why you're getting a paycheck to
if you're gonna give shit to Tulsi Gabbard for doing it, you give shit to AOC for doing it.
I give shit to everyone. I don't understand how present is an option. I think it shouldn't be an option. You're being paid to do something. Nobody's paying you to just be present. I don't understand. Did you go through all of the super chats and like say stuff? I don't want to talk about Kari Lake.
Ronwell, again, thank you very much. It was great to have you here. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And yes, Chris, I think it was a great conversation with Angela, even if you guys don't agree with everything she said.
And Chris totally also got the concept of it is not my job to sit there and rail on people about MMT.
And Danny, thank you, of course, for the contribution. We bring
you
it
give
up.
A little something, something.
Can't give. Well,
all right.
Let me know who you want.
Let him know who you want.
Let me know who you want. Well, I think we know who we're going to get because
I think he likes Bill.
The Donald's biggest foot soldier in terms of somebody who's running for a high office. Now, Kari Lake, of course, is running for the U.S. Senate in Arizona, which without question is probably one of the top 3 swing states in the country right now, along with Pennsylvania and probably Georgia. You can even throw Wisconsin.
Can I put it out there first and foremost that I have really no opinion on her really whatsoever?
I don't really either, but what I do have an opinion on
I barely know anything
is
about her.
that political bribery is a lot more common than people are willing to admit.
If you guys remember, we had Hill Harper on here who was offered $20 million to challenge Rashida Tlaib instead of run for the U.S. Senate.
Now they want to. Now they realize that Kari Lake, the only reason somebody's bribing her to get out of the race is because by statistical measure, by her doing well, that means Trump's probably going to win Arizona, and so they want to get him out of the. They want to get her out of the race
because she'll bring out Trump voters.
She is the biggest Trump cheerleader,
and she'll bring out, and her race she'll bring out Trump voters.
So this gets very interesting.
Is there a number at which
I can be bought?
Not be bought.
That's what it's about.
You can take a pause for a couple of years.
No.
And then go right back to what you're doing.
No. 10 million, 20 million, 30, no. A billion, no.
See, this
This is
makes
not
me
about
like
money.
her.
This is about our country.
Can we pause it for a second? First of all, she's obviously recording this, right? Like, so she's recording this knowing she's going to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So right there, this says a lot of things about her.
You can also tell that she started recording this at a point where there was already an in-depth conversation, because you could tell that it begins at a point where she already knows what's going on. Like, she knows what this guy's been suggesting.
And
this is Arizona GOP chair, not anymore after today, Jeff DeWitt. Jeff DeWitt actually stepped down today.
So she kind of is in a position where she knows where this is going. She's going to use it to her advantage. She's going to set him up. Now, on the one hand, I appreciate the fact that she is so candid and just says, you want to know how much I can be bought for? I can't. And I appreciate that she says she can't be bought. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. I don't know enough about her. But the fact that she at least takes that position is impressive. However, the fact that she's recording the conversation is something to me that, like, as somebody in this field, I would never, ever work with her or engage with her or trust her or anything without like a room full of witnesses and a stenographer present.
Well, that's going to be the flip side of this now, because now, even though she's exposed,
can't be trusted.
No, how could she be?
I think it's disturbing that they would that anybody would think this is.
No, to be fair, even me, I'll say this. I want a fresh face right now. For the reason that I've never seen anyone, I can't think of a single person in a federal race who lost ran in and won? Can't think of it. If you can think of it, let me know.
I am not going to let these people who hate our country tell me not to run. You should call them and tell them to get behind me. So what's going on? What is, I'm assuming this is our friend.
This is back east.
Oh, people calling the shots from
very
back.
powerful.
So
Now we're outside of Arizona,
now we're talking DC.
right? So now it's like, it's so mafia. It really does. It reminds me of like with like Bugsy out in Vegas and like, well, you know, the guys back home are, you know, calling the shots out here. It's just so ridiculous.
Metal, this has nothing to do with whether or not she recorded it. It's a question of now that she has it.
Oh,
Again,
no.
it's not wrong that she did it, but just know that no one's going to trust her now.
No,
That's all.
Again, I'm not saying that I'm not, I said these are the two things that I learned about her. I appreciate the integrity and that she basically just called it what it was and that she said no. But I also recognize that if I were in somebody that had to work with her, that I'm very suspicious.
Great.
People don't want to keep you out.
I know they do.
But they're willing to put their money where their mouth is in a big way. So, this conversation never happened.
This is crazy, though. They should want me. I'm a great candidate. People love me. These people are corrupt.
Well, maybe you're right.
They are right. They are corrupt.
Maybe. This never happened. Don't go. Do me a favor, though. I don't get myself in trouble. This.
Oh, you did.
But he's in trouble. But the truth is, so is she. In terms of ever really being accepted into any party infrastructure. Like, again, I'm not saying that he's not a complete piece of shit, because he is. And she could have, like, there's a million ways she could have handled this, where he could have gotten called out without her making a public spectacle and without her trying to claim some sort of glory for herself, because she did this to make it look like she has so much integrity. So she's putting this out there. But in reality, if she really had a whole lot of integrity, she would have handled it differently, and he should still lose his position.
If you say no, which is fine, it's your choice. Don't tell people.
They're gonna try to have me murdered.
I don't that either. Today's world, man. If that stuff that came out last week is right about the cartel stuff, man. Right? They say the cartel is operating in 50 states right now, like all 50. You know? So
what's going on? Who is it? What?
Forget the who. Let me just tell you the what. Let's just say there are people calling around saying, gosh, no, they can't repeat this. Never repeat this. If you say no, don't. If you say, I got offered to buy out, don't use it. Because then we lose our ability to get things done.
Here's my problem. Rather than just say, let's work with her, she's a great candidate. Because they don't own me. And it pisses me off.
Yes, I don't know about ownership.
It's about control.
I don't know it's about control.
Yeah, she's got her phone on her.
It's about being on the team, I guess.
There it is. There it is.
Be on the team.
And you know what?
Kari.
We don't even need to play anything else. That's the end of the conversation.
And I honestly, like I said, I don't
It's
have an
about
opinion
being
about
on the team.
I don't know enough about her one way or the other than she's just a Trump supporter.
You know, you have to wonder if there was a similar conversation that Bernie had to have with somebody like Obama, especially back in 2016. Bernie did a great job, but listen, Barack, I appreciate your concern.
So,
you got to play the team ball.
You know what I realized though? So now let's compare apples and apples. Okay. So here's one way to handle the situation, how Kari Lake just handled that. Remember, we had Hill Harper on the show. So he was offered $20 million by somebody that we don't really know. We don't know. He still hasn't shared exactly who the person was, but it's somebody affiliated with the Israel lobby. And he was offered $20 million to run against Rashida Tlaib. Now, instead of going forward with that information and humiliating whoever it was who did that, he actually didn't go public with it at all. But he did tell Rashida Tlaib and her people who did it and what they did. See, that's how you do it. You give it to there's a way to handle something, and then there's a way not to handle something. There's a way to handle something where you actually come out looking amazing, like Hill Harper, who comes off looking like he has amazing integrity, because he does. And the information still got out how it needed to get out. except for he doesn't look like a self-serving piece of shit. And she kind of does.
Now, one of the things that I will say, and I will get to it, Danny. I will get to it. Here's the thing, and this is one thing I will say in Kari's defense, which I do think is a big deal. Do I think it's very possible that there is a true movement within MAGA that really wants an America First agenda that does not involve bringing in people from other countries to work for pennies on the dollar to screw working people? Yes, I do believe that that is real. Now, one of the reasons why this is a big problem in a state like Arizona is Arizona is a border state. And we all know that when it comes to the border states, there is, again, if you haven't seen the movie Sicario, for example, with Benicio del Toro, that's a great movie. That'll, just gives you a good example. A movie that came out in 2000, which I loved very much, was Traffic. If you haven't seen that movie.
I didn't hear him mention a car bomb. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
He's talking about being bombed by the by the cartels. Do I think that it's very possible that they could attempt to sick a cartel after Kari Lake as a misdirect because they could say that, oh, well, we didn't have anything to do with it. It was the cartels that came after her. Sure, that's possible.
Otherwise, why would he have brought it up?
Absolutely. That's the whole point. The reason he's bringing that up to her, quite frankly, is to threaten her.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a threat.
That conversation was total. The whole thing was a threat, but she knew it. To me, she didn't. That's just not how I would have handled the situation.
Well, how would you have handled it?
Well, I wouldn't go public with that. I would handle it privately and make sure that people that needed to know that happened.
So
I would potentially, depending on, the ins and outs and who's involved, release it to the right people. But I wouldn't just publicly play that.
Okay,
like
well,
that.
what
Like,
about potentially? What about potentially after it's all said and done? You have a recording, you keep it, you put it in a very safe place, and you basically tell them, I have you on audio telling me that basically I'm going to get myself killed if I don't step away because this state is too important to the establishment, and that you basically think that I'm some type of a, maverick, if you will, like good old John McCain.
When you do things where you're getting threats, you need to have some sort of kill switch. And so
she gave that up.
Well, she gave that up, and she showed her hand, and it's more, what she really showed is that she is very much like Trump in that it was all about her right now. It was about her showing him up right now. There was no strategy, no thought involved. It was just very, what did she say?
Travers, you really are the funniest on the
I do
show.
love
You
Ferrero
really
Rocher.
do.
Actually, and hazelnut is a personal favorite of
It's
mine. I've been
delicious.
snacking on Nutella lately.
The one thing you are correct about, Metal, is simply this. This is something that isn't as effective on the Republican side as it is on the Democratic side. You see, on the Democratic side, everybody just seems to get in line. So when the call went out that, okay, we're getting behind Joe and you're going to get behind Joe, and that's that. Now, do I think that they necessarily have the same type of conversation where they tell you that you either get behind Joe or you're going to end up in a hole somewhere? Probably not. But do I think that they threaten them in a way that gets the message, gets the point across? Yeah, probably.
Metal, there's just different ways of handling things. Do I think that she could have exposed that she's been approached? Yeah. And do I think she needed to necessarily publicly name names until stuff was dealt with first? Not necessarily.
Which doesn't actually show that she's as shrewd as she thinks she is.
Well, that's what we're saying. It's like she really showed her hand.
Yeah.
She really played her hand too fast with that.
Yeah, you need to hold on to that.
There's a lot of things. Like I
if
just wouldn't have done it like that.
Like that audio would have had so much more value in October.
Metal, we know this, that we already know that we don't get to pick candidates.
Versus October. You do that in October. You don't do that in January. People are going to not necessarily forget about it, but it's not going to have the same punch. If you brought that up a week before the election, that could push her over the edge, especially if it's a tight race.
But see, here's the thing. Unless she's strategically using it to just get on higher up on the short pick for VP. To impress Trump.
That, you see, now that's, again, here's the lawyer here. It's actually a very astute observation because if they are trying to figure out a way to get her out, but Trump is actually very interested in having her as his VP, which I've always felt was very possible because she really is somebody who would be a safeguard. She's not the type of person like a Nikki Haley where Trump literally would have to be looking over his shoulder 24/7.
No, Kari Lake is sycophantic
so much like that. And she's got so much more personality than somebody like Christine Noem would ever have. So I could definitely,
So maybe that's her strategy is if I do this now and I can show off that they're after me, I'll get attention. It'll bring attention to me. Trump will he'll realize that they're going after me because I want to hit, like, I don't know. So when he says it's about being on the team, he's right. And she's showing she's on Trump's team while he's out there right now, ready to at some point announce a VP selection.
I definitely agree, and I think that's where the differentiation becomes debate. Well, but here's the thing: this is also is good. Chris Garrett, look at this. Everybody's coming in hot with these very cute quips tonight. Don't, please.
I hate when you try to control that, but I don't understand why.
Because it's just.
Can I at least meddle? We've talked about SR, and it's just one of those things that is like, it's just not worth getting more shadow banned over discussing. But we have addressed that before,
because
and we're
unfortunately,
very aware of that situation.
Because unfortunately, the person who likes to go out of their way to try to get a shadow ban would use that.
Yeah.
1,000.
Like the person of whom we might be speaking is somebody that is specifically aware of me and is my district person who had any involvement in the potential of anything having to do with any of that. And so I think that for me to bring it up, it's just not necessary. But David, yes, we are very aware.
David, here's the thing. Two things are true.
Low bar, man. Low bar.
I would say that Joe Biden is not as anti-labor as those three individuals are.
And I think the railroad workers might beg to differ.
And I think his breaking of the railroad strike, which is the first time a strike had been broken since Reagan in 1981, that's not something you want to hang around your neck. And you can make up any excuse you want about how the railroad workers got sick days. You're right, they did. They didn't get a fraction, not even a tiny fraction of what they set out to get. And frankly, what they're entitled to. They work in a very dangerous
I don't think people truly understand. Guys, we did an episode on this. We did a show on this. And we actually had on one of the drivers. Do we call them drivers? Engineers? I mean, they're engineers for Norfolk Southern. And it was somebody that came on. It was during that time of the negotiation. We had Max Alvarez on. We had some other people on with the railroad. And those guys work 14-hour shifts. Okay?
Sometimes 7 days a week.
7 days a week. And here's where it gets
better. And that
better.
hasn't changed.
And then what they've done is they've reduced it from a 3-person team per car or per train, or not per car, per train, to a 2-person team. And it doesn't even matter how big the train is, like these most ridiculous things that you can ever imagine. So there's no safety being taken seriously here. That's the problem. We're not just talking about a labor issue. It is a labor issue, and people should not have to work like that. But we're talking about a serious safety issue. Like, it's a serious safety issue.
Now, what I will say, David, that if this gentleman was president of the United States, he certainly would have made a real difference with labor.
Yes, I do agree with that.
If I were to be the president of the United States, Jen, good to see you. There is no question that I would have done a much better job on labor. That is the truth. I think we can all agree that I would have made sure that there would be no union busting, that we would be able to stand on the picket line with the soft shoe for more than 12 minutes, if you catch my drift.
So I have an interesting question for you, Bernie.
What's that?
Okay, so Vermont's right next to New Hampshire, right? Like, you guys are kind of neighbors, right? Like, it's okay. So are you aware that in the New Hampshire primary, that ceasefire got more votes than some of the candidates did? Not Joe, but that's how many people in New Hampshire want ceasefire instead of voting. Is that not something you might want to consider?
I think it's up to the people to decide if they want to vote for something.
I'm just saying that to me represents that a lot of people in your neck of the woods are wanting a ceasefire.
This is not an impression. I am actually here right now in the studio with Jen Perlman. She's a lovely lady. I don't agree with everything that she says. I have a good friend. His name is Joe Biden.
I don't understand how you can have family that died in the Holocaust and not be calling for a ceasefire right now. I just don't understand. Well, the truth is, I don't understand how anybody can't be calling for a ceasefire right now. I don't understand how we could be talking about anything else until this stops.
I have done the best I can.
No.
My face cannot stay on straight because I am constantly twisting myself into a pretzel.
Clearly.
To remind people that I am not here to debate the merits of whether or not we have a ceasefire. What we really need is to have humanitarian aid, and we need to find a way to get this violence to stop.
The problem is that they're sending over tons and tons of aid, but does everybody understand that none of it's actually getting in, and that there is about thousands of trucks sitting in the middle of the freaking desert at the Rafah crossing down near Egypt, and Israel won't let the trucks in. They're not letting the aid in. So all these aid trucks that we're sending aren't getting in. However, for some really interesting reason, people, I have caught note that if you guys do not follow the World Central Kitchen, which is, I think it's Jose Andres' organization, the World Central Kitchen, apparently, and I know it's a really good charity and it's one that my mom's always been big into, but apparently World Central Kitchen is actually on the ground in like a handful of locations in Gaza. So if I were putting out recommendations, if people wanted to donate, I would donate to the World Central Kitchen because I know for a fact they're actually on the ground, they're able, and they're serving. All of these aid trucks are not getting in. Israel's not letting them in. Anything that could potentially be used militarily is not being let in. So things like medical stuff could be used militarily, like all of these things. And then if one thing gets denied, the whole truck gets denied.
Again, like I said, I totally agree. I think that we definitely need to not only have a ceasefire, I think we need to have humanitarian aid. And I think
well, the real Bernie hasn't called for a ceasefire, so it's nice that fantasy Bernie is suggesting that. But the real Bernie has not asked for a ceasefire.
I can also tell you that I understand the concept that federal taxes do not pay for goods and services. Is that how it's done? Is that
yes, that's true. It's not. Yes, we support an MNT.
Federal taxes do not fund the government.
No, they don't fund anything. They don't go anywhere. It just comes away from the people and it goes into space.
So you mean to tell me it's reversed? Is that what it is?
What I'm telling you is that that money doesn't go anywhere. There's not some lady sitting and counting the tax dollars like in it, like, you know.
It sounds very complicated. Maybe I'm a little too old to be doing this now. Maybe I need to retire.
Maybe you should call for a ceasefire.
I can think about it, but you know, I've got other things to worry about right now. I've got to protect my good friend Joe because he's likely going to lose to Donald Trump.
Your friend Joe is a genocidal maniac.
He's certainly not a good man anymore.
I honestly, I can't even. I just can't. I can't.
I'm sorry that I've let you all down. But remember, it's not me. It's us.
You know what? We are not all in a position to call for a ceasefire in Congress. You are sitting in the Senate and can call for a ceasefire and at least join the list. There's only 3 senators on it right now, and you're not one of them. And you should be embarrassed.
I'm slightly embarrassed if that makes you feel any better.
It does actually make me feel a little bit better, but it's not enough.
Well, hopefully one day it will be. Godspeed to all of you.
I'm seriously so unhappy with him.
I'm upset.
How I can be look, I have always defended, like, it's not, Bernie was never meant to do, like, it's not his job to do everything. I've always taken this in. But this is where he should be on that list.
The other problem, of course, with Bernie is that this really is the end of the road for him. Like, there really isn't a justification for him to run for office again. Frankly, he's at a point in his life where he really shouldn't be running for office anymore. He's definitely done his part.
I am so sick of DMFI. You know what? The whole world needs to just come down on those groups. Enough of them. It's enough of them already.
The problem that...
And yet the people that support that blame Russia for interfering in our elections.
It is Russia's fault.
So definitely. Russia and Putin are interfering with our elections. That's a problem. But Israel interfering in our elections isn't a problem. And Israel's organizations are the only ones that don't have to register as foreign agents.
Yeah, that's got to stop.
Think about that.
There's a lot of things that need to happen.
So demented.
But ultimately, we are in a situation where that change does not come easily.
But us and libertarians would all be pardoning Julian Assange. I could tell you that.
You got to start somewhere. And that's why we do have a good amount of camaraderie with them. And that's why I hope you guys understand that these conversations are necessary.
I know people want me to like fight with people and school them and think that that's somehow
like counterpoints.
Like, I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. I don't enjoy that. It's not my place. You know what?
I think that you can.
No, everybody has a lane. And I want everybody to understand this very, very clearly. When the campaign ended in 20 and I decided to do a podcast, okay? This podcast, first of all, it wasn't ever going to be a live thing. This podcast started out because I wanted to use my platform to educate people and bring on really good guests, but I want to learn things. I want to be the sponge. I want people to come on and teach me things. I don't want to be a talking political head. That was never what I really wanted to do. There's other people that do that. I don't want to sit there and argue with people. That is not my lane. I went to law school to lobby. Lobbying is actually something I actually like. I could do that. I understand that. People have problems with lobbyists because they don't understand what lobbying is. But
corporate lobbyists versus regular.
Yes. Well, the point is this. Lobbying is actually one of the most democratic things. I actually wanted to talk about this at some point because lobbying is one of the most democratic things that a country can have. It comes from things like the Grange, from like farmers getting together and working together to form cohesive groups to get things done. Lobbying comes from organizations and groups where you can't have every single member talking to their congressperson. So they need to form smaller, they need representation. Those groups need representation. That is totally good. And by the way, if I were sitting in Congress and something comes across my desk and it's about agriculture, yes, I'd like to talk to all the different lobbyists and know what their positions are. I want to understand the issue. Those are the people that often write the legislation because they understand it the best. Congress people are not experts on all of these things. So the lobbyists are needed to write the legislation because they actually represent those groups. I want farmers writing agricultural legislation. I want teachers writing education legislation. Like, that is how this should go. Likewise, I actually think that gun owners should be writing gun regulation, not the NRA. That is now by the corporate gun manufacturers. That is no longer an actual lobbying for a group of people. It is now just the spokes arm for the gun manufacturers. So, see, there is a place for lobbying. Yes. There is a place for lobbying. For example, I went to law school thinking I was going to lobby for like the Innocence Project because I am against the death penalty. Or, you know, at the time when I was a volunteer for Planned Parenthood. And you need people to educate Congress people on these issues. And you get that from experts in those different demographics. So if something's coming up about, you know, an indigenous situation in like, you know, New Mexico, yeah, I want to talk to the people that represent the different groups. I want to know what the different details are. So lobbyists serve a purpose. The money exchange and the revolving door has got to stop. There needs to be almost like, it's not called a no compete, where you can't go into one for X amount of years if you whatever it is.
Same with being able to trade, you know, stocks.
Yes. You can regulate it. Like, lobbyists need to be there for information purposes, for helping the draft policy purposes, but it can't be to buy you.
Guys, can I ask you why everyone is showing up now? Like, we had half this audience for like the majority of the show, and now we've got 40
somebody else
people.
Must have been live.
Did somebody else end their show, and now you found your way over
Thursday
here?
Nights, it's
That's kind of what I figured.
Whatever.
Yeah, I know we're not that.
But so no, I've actually been wanting to talk about that because I always kind of get my panties in a bunch when people like throw all lobbyists under a bus. Because honestly, if we didn't have lobbyists, forget the money. Let's take the money out of the equation, who's buying who and paying them off and paying for campaigns. But if we didn't have those people, it would be very, very hard to draft proper policy to serve various communities and to really have experts that know this stuff. So it's just a matter of, again, taking the profit and the money out of the equation and not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Guys, if you are just joining us, we started this show with an hour-long conversation with the chair of the Libertarian Party, Angela McCardle. I think you'll find that a lot of the discussion was very fruitful, as I'm sure most of our wonderful chat has a similar sentiment, I would imagine. We have not obviously figured out who we're going to be talking to on Monday as of yet.
We've been very fly by the seat of our pants.
Lately, it's been that way, yeah.
It's okay.
We need to set our guests up a little bit more. Maybe we'll go and host Jordan Chariton's Status Quo show again and bring the audience back.
That's
have
always,
like 80
I
people
don't care,
come on
however.
board.
I mean, whenever he needs help, that's good. I mean, he's got Ron. He's
Anthony, we're very happy to have you here.
We're band practice.
But you must be on
Nice.
another part of the country. I'm guessing you're probably in California, or at least on the West Coast, because that would mean band practice ending at 8 o'clock is now after 11 o'clock. That's what I
Yes,
thought.
because they do it after their jobs.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't know what. Spoken like someone who is not a musician.
I'm not a musician.
I feel you. I feel you.
She's got a musician in her family.
I birthed one. Greatest creation I've ever made is birthing a musician. It's true.
Center. I'm curious which one. I'm curious.
I'm not.
Nah, I guess it doesn't matter.
I don't care.
I think we put out really solid content.
We do, but so that's my point. My thing is to put out information and be a resource, but I really don't want to fight.
No, I don't
just
think it's about
I don't want to
fighting.
argue with people. Even the idea of like lobbying, it's not about arguing. It's about
No.
presenting information. I can be very persuasive. Let me be clear. I can be extremely.
It's funny. That's a
Persuasive.
great line from The Simpsons. I can be very, very persuasive.
I can be very,
Leave
very
town.
persuasive. But
be
there's a difference
friends.
between like, and the reason I decided to go to law school was I was working at the Indiana Chamber of Commerce. And even though I didn't agree with like what they were lobbying for, I was their media relations manager. But I decided that I wanted to get into lobbying, and I loved going over to the State House and learning about policy. And I remember talking to the lobbyists and saying, should I go to law school? And they said, well, you know, you don't have to, but it would be very helpful. And so that was why I went to law school. And the truth is, law school is very helpful for understanding policy
Yeah.
and
No.
legislation. It is. I mean, it is. It's possible.
Which
It's
is
very.
why-
It's very. You know.
Which is why I still believe
It's
in this.
helpful.
I still believe in our country. I still think that there's a lot of positives that can come from a lot of the things that we do. I think that there is agreeability on a number of key issues. I think that the wedge issues that divide us are always the ones that get in the way of actual change. You know, there are things that, you know, we talk about when it comes to other content creators. You know, there are content creators who are absolutely on top of their game when it comes to key issues. But at the same time, they believe in throwing the baby out with the bathwater if people don't line up with them 100% across the board.
There's a lot of that.
Then you have other people that are very good at analyzing very important key issues, but they spend a significant portion of their time ragging on other content creators who do things that they don't agree with.
But that's also because that's what gets them views, because that's the supply and demand thing. And that has more to do with who we are, you know, collectively, as that's what gets the clicks. So that's sort of more a supply and demand thing.
We are a small but mighty channel, RC Quake, and that is exactly why we do what we do. We are about transforming politics into service. Remember,
We're trying.
for as little as $5, you can support our patron. You become a patron and support our channel.
Yes,
You know, the ones who
very
donate
helpful.
25 get themselves the Generational Change jersey.
Or
it's-
t-shirt.
Glenn, of course.
Mine's cut because I can't have sleeves.
Jen's-
I really am averse
Jen's
to
a
sleeves.
trendsetter.
I am averse to sleeves. I know it wasn't so. It's so interesting. Yeah, when we did the congressional campaign, it was
Yeah.
like so unusual that I demanded.
That
He'll
get
tell
no
you.
Sleeves.
No, that I had tank tops.
Yeah, well,
Not just no sleeves. I wanted tank tops. I wanted the kind
and
that
they
I
were
wanted.
the biggest hit.
And they were the biggest hit. And the team at that point, I mean, it was like men, and they were like just going to get the t-shirts, and I'm like, no, I'm not wearing that. So we had to get tank tops, and yes, they were extremely popular.
Yeah.
Even with Sam.
Yes, Sam. Well, Sam looked lovely.
Sam did look great in that tank top. He was adorable.
Especially dancing across the street.
He's the cutest.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
He's the cutest.
And Bruce, that is great to hear. Don't let people manipulate your emotions. And Center Podcast, if that is the channel that you were watching, that's fine.
I don't
We're
know
glad-
what channel we're talking about.
Right here.
Oh, okay.
We're glad that you're here, and we hope that you're enjoying our content. You know, like I said, we don't dabble in that garbage because there's no point. And we know
You know
that,
what?
and we know that
It's not. I don't have the mental capability, quite honestly, to allocate resources to nonsense.
and a center is coming from.
I just don't.
And if Center is coming from that channel, Center obviously knows that channel's been speaking about us lately. And you know what?
They hate me.
Who cares?
I don't. Honestly, how I feel about it is I feel sad that anybody is in a position where they view me in such a way that I'm so like, I just don't understand it. I am neither in a position to change.
Well, that's also the
things.
problem.
Like I am not in a power position. I haven't created the issue.
And we can end on this note, because if you think about it, this is why the libertarians are actually very effective, and why on the political right especially. Do you think that the GOP as a standalone party is anti-war? No, there is such an infiltration of libertarianism in the Republican Party that they have no choice but to be anti-war.
But because of that, I'm grateful.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Because if it weren't for the Republicans right now, there wouldn't be an anti-war voice going on. And now I don't agree with their reasons. I don't agree with why they have issues with what they have issues with, but I don't care. Yeah. Again, we can agree that this is a problem and not agree as to why it's a problem.
Denny, and again, bringing up a good point. And I don't believe that Stephanie Kelton is the greatest gift of what Bernie Sanders brought to the table. I think she's a great gift, but I think the greatest gift that Bernie Sanders brought to the table, maybe more than anything else, when you think about everybody who's in the chat,
he brought us the table.
Everybody who's in this chat tonight is liberal left, populist right, libertarian, maybe even centrist in between. That's funny.
No, this is clearly a Bostonian.
Are you sure about that?
No, I'm not entirely sure about that.
Maybe
but the only people that have issues with Dolphins fans are Patriots fans.
That's not true at all. Jets fans hate Dolphins fans.
Why?
Why not? That's a common problem.
Whatever.
Please go to patreon.com if you would be so kind.
Although, guys, slowly but surely, and in case anybody was wondering, now that Tom Brady isn't around anymore, who I'm going to start allocating all of my dislike to, and it's Patrick Mahomes. He is very slowly but surely replacing Tom Brady to me in the realm of douchey princess quarterbacks.
That is what I would definitely agree, Chris, is Bernie's greatest legacy. Is that he did awaken the masses, and he awoken them before Trump did. In fact, a lot of what Trump ended up doing was piggybacking off of Bernie. He saw what Bernie was doing, and he recognized that was the way forward. And so by that
Travers, I am that girl from the 70s. I am a 70s girl. That was me. When I went to Dolphins games, Flipper was in the end zone. They had the Dolphin was in the
Snowflake.
I'm not.
Jen has not seen Ace Ventura.
No, because I don't see stupidity.
Quarterbacks.
It's not my thing. But when I was a kid, the Dolphin was in the
Did I not call that? I told you I called that. I did say the Jets.
Can't we just agree to all hate the Patriots?
The Jets absolutely hate the Patriots.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, don't begrudge me. I gave up all of my loathing towards the Bills and the Jets just to be able to focus all of my hatred on the Patriots. And I still have that.
Let's leave on this note. The reason why libertarians are effective is because there are baseline issues that they fight for that are universally supported, and they do not move on them. They fight for civil liberties, anti-war, and many others.
Do you want to know why, really? Because I know why.
But they're
why they're effective versus like the Greens?
Because libertarians are cohesive. They actually they fight for each other.
No. But again, do you know why? Because I do know, if you're comparing something like, why do the libertarians, might they be more successful than the Greens? If that's what this person is asking, I'm not entirely sure. Is that what they're asking?
If you don't like my music, is asking.
Okay. So my thought is this, okay? The Greens and other leftist organizations are too concerned with their feelings. And I've said it a million times, libertarians don't give a shit about your feelings. And when you're dealing with people on the left and progressives, they're very touchy-feely. It's about their feelings and it's about what offends them and all of this shit.
Tell you,
libertarians don't give a shit about that. That's why they can be effective.
And let's leave on this note. When Jen was running for Congress, there was a person who you would consider to be progressive, helping us out. And this had to do with like some type of marketing material for the campaign. And because we decided to change it because it wasn't, to be honest, I'm the one who wanted it changed and started changing it. And she had a conniption over it. a conniption that lasted for how long?
Wait, who are we talking about? The girl with the flyer?
I have to tell my truth.
You weren't there. You're only relating my story. I had to sit on the phone with this girl. This was a girl who was volunteering, and she offered to do a flyer for us, a digital flyer. And it was cute. It was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. But then I decided that I was going to redo it so that it was cohesive with this other thing I was doing. So I redid it or whatever. This girl kept me on the phone for an hour. I was scared she was going to like slit her wrist. She was crying and saying I betrayed her by lying to her and telling her that the flyer was good. And how could I do that? And she won't work for someone who doesn't let her speak. This is a volunteer who reached out and said she would do a digital flyer for us, that I didn't let her speak her truth. And like, she went off and said, that shit doesn't happen in the Libertarian Party.
No.
That shit doesn't happen in the GOP. That shit only happens on the left.
Yeah.
And that's why when I think about why are libertarians potentially more organized, and that to me is what comes to mind. They're not gonna throw the baby out with the bathwater.
You know, the one thing we didn't bring up is the fact that they do smoke weed, and that would have been the one.
Well, they are that, and again, I don't agree with them on a lot of things, and I don't have to. But when someone's saying why are they more effective than other third parties, I do believe that it's because they're not consumed with the touchy-feely bullshit.
Red Cloud, thanks for checking in. Listen, the Steelers have maybe the most loyal fan base in the NFL.
Okay, I will say this. I've never had any issue with the Steelers. Like, it's never been, it's like
the only issue I've ever really had with the Steelers is that you guys had Super Bowl 40 gifted to you by the
Wait a minute, a friend of mine played for the Steelers. Didn't Chad Brown play for the Steelers? Did Chad Brown play for the Steelers?
I don't know that Chad Brown's your friend, and I maybe.
Okay. Yeah, no. He and I went to Boulder together. He lived in Libby Hall. He lived in my dorm my freshman year. I knew him from the Colorado Buffaloes. And then he went to, just like I also was friends with Eric Bieniemy.
Eric, yes.
That was that class. He was in that same football class.
So was Holly. That's funny. That Holly, the sports acupuncturist, my friend.
Oh, really?
She's also friends with Eric Bieniemy.
Really?
Yeah. That's really weird.
Anyway.
Oh, small world.
Did she go to Boulder?
No, not
That's
that I
kind
know
of weird.
of.
Okay, but anyway, so I have no beef with the Steelers. I will say this. I very much like Pittsburgh. I very much like number 22, Mercury Morris, my very first jersey. And let me say this. So he came to speak when I was at the University of Colorado. Mercury Morris was sort of on this. Mercury Morris took basically the fall for the entire team regarding the cocaine charges back in the day.
Yeah, that's true. He did.
And after he did time, he was sort of doing the tour around college campuses, and Mercury Morris was coming to the University of Colorado. And I had my mom send me this picture of me. I was like 3 years old wearing my number 22 jersey, and he signed it. I brought it to him, and he wrote, "Jennifer, you're all grown up, number 22, Mercury Morris." And it made me so happy. And so I was number 22 until I became number 13 with Dan Marino. So that was a long time. But yes, I started going to Dolphins games so I was about 2 years old in 73. And my dad had season tickets since the beginning of the franchise.
And you were also at one of the greatest games.
I was at one of the greatest. I am also very much cheering for the Lions.
I think we could all agree that the Super Bowl.
Definitely.
We would like to, I mean, listen,
Can they please not wear those all gray uniforms that look like long johns?
Now, as much as I think that the best Super Bowl matchup that one would want in terms of marketing, without question, is Chiefs-Lions. The problem is that if it's Chiefs-Lions, I think the Chiefs are going to beat them, and I don't want that to happen.
I'm done with the Chiefs.
I'm done with Taylor. I'm done with her, and I'm done with the whole fiasco. I'm done with the whole,
Michigan and Detroit needs some love.
I think that they can win. I think they could win on Sunday.
And just, you know what? I will always support the team that has never won to win. Right? Like, that just makes the most sense to me. And the fact that it's Detroit and just how much their people have suffered, like, economically for so many years, and what's going on there with Flint and I don't know. I just feel like anything to give a win to that state would be a good thing. But I really, really dislike the new gray uniforms. It looks like they're wearing long johns.
Hopefully
they're so undignified. They just look dirty because they're just gray. I don't know. I don't like it.
I think that
it's unfortunate.
I think it's going to be an interesting weekend. I think that
72 Dolphins. That's right. And then who was the team to beat the only team to come close? That would be the Miami Dolphins beating the Chicago Bears.
To be honest,
Monday night Orange Bowl. I was there. It was amazing. I was in the end. That was the seats in the end zone.
I still think that overall the greatest team of all time is the 85 Bears, but the only problem with saying that that 85 Bears team is the best of all time is that they didn't play the Dolphins in the Super Bowl, and they should have. But unfortunately, what was a 3-year honeymoon with Dan Marino came crashing down in the AFC title game where the Patriots beat them at the Orange Bowl Stadium in the AFC Championship game. That was really when the curse of the Dolphins.
I don't agree that Chicago Bears. I just don't agree. I think that McMahon was very overrated. I don't think
McMahon was an average quarterback, but that team from Walter Payton.
That's the only person on that team that I like. That was it. And when they let the Fridge make the play that should have been Walter Payton for him to break the record in his final game, in his final play, and they gave him that was it. And then I forever hated Mike Ditka.
Henry Kajawa waiting for you to show up and say hello.
Seriously.
That's what it's about. So prediction before we go. Who do you got?
With who?
For Sunday, what do you got?
Wait, remind me, it's Baltimore.
You got Baltimore, Kansas City, and Detroit, San Francisco.
Well, I'm rooting for Baltimore and Detroit. I'm rooting for Baltimore because I'm really just bored of Kansas City. I don't like it. Just like the Patriots is annoying. Also, I am very slowly but surely finding Mahomes to be almost as crybaby annoying as Tom Brady. He acts like a 5-year-old. He reminds me of Ozone from, Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. I just think he's ridiculous. I don't know. They're a circus. I don't like that. And they've won a bunch of times. So I'm right there. I'm going to root for Baltimore to beat them because Kansas City is annoying as hell.
I think
and then I'm rooting for Detroit because, like I just said, it's Detroit.
I definitely think that Baltimore and Kansas City is a toss-up. You give the edge to Kansas City because of the
Motown,
experience.
For God's sake.
But I also think that Baltimore's time might be now. When they crushed the Dolphins. Sorry.
No, trust me, I'm still happy. I have no anger about it.
When they crushed the Dolphins a month ago, you saw the best team in the league pretty much. When you saw them crush the 49ers.
And I would still and that's fine. And let them get there. Good. Let them be that. Let them beat Kansas City. That would be lovely. And then I'll be rooting for Detroit.
Ray, I don't smoke cigars, but I love the smell of a Cuban cigar.
I like the smell of cigar. I'll go sit in a cigar bar with you, though.
That's cool.
I really wish that people treated cannabis users the way they treat drinkers and cigar people. It's really unfair. I mean, more and more we're seeing it, but even having...
So Nelson actually agrees with me. I do think that the 85 Bears are the greatest team of all time.
He didn't say that. That is not saying that's the greatest team of all time. He just said who no matter would have played against them. And the Dolphins beat them that year.
The 85 Bears would have beat the 72 Dolphins. I'm just saying.
I think that's just ridiculous.
And as far as Detroit, San Francisco,
that was like the Larry Zonka team.
As far as Detroit, San Francisco is concerned, I do think that if Deebo Samuel plays and he's healthy, I'd love for Detroit to win, but I think San Francisco will pull it out.
I'm old school people. I always say I remember quarterbacks calling plays.
I think it's very likely. That
I remember Bob Greasy in the huddle. I remember Bob Greasy calling plays.
The two number one seeds are likely to get to the Super Bowl, but I think anything's possible. I think most people would agree. And I got to tell you, and this I do believe in my heart of hearts. I think if Buffalo beat Kansas City last week as they should have, I actually think Buffalo would go and beat Baltimore. I do.
I was rooting for Buffalo, and I normally wouldn't. This is why I'm speaking to my Jets fan out there. It's like we got to have some certain solidarity from, we need divisional solidarity in a time like this.
I think Red Cloud is definitely onto something. I agree.
You know what? Let me tell you, I'm very happy to watch them beat Kansas. And then really once we get past it, the truth is once the Dolphins are out, I don't really have a horse in the race.
I definitely agree, Ray. You're missing the 85 Bears, but the 86 Giants and the 84 49ers, those three teams in a row. 84 49ers, 85 Bears, 86 Giants. Those are the 3 years of the three greats. And yes, the 72 Dolphins belong there. I'm not saying that they don't.
The no-name defense.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things.
We also have the killer bees.
So we both agree it's going to be Baltimore and Detroit.
That's what I want.
What's your prediction?
As to who wins that?
Yeah.
That's a ridiculous question to ask me. I know so little about.
We hope that when we see you guys on Monday, it's Baltimore
Remind me. Wait.
Detroit.
Remind me who the quarterbacks are again.
Jared Goff, Detroit. Brock Purdy, San Francisco.
Okay, no. I like that Goff. He's adorable. Isn't he the one that just like came in this season?
No,
like,
he's been there for a few years.
But like he wasn't.
He was there.
Was he just not their starter or something?
I am. That's great, Carla. Absolutely great. And that's why the Packers are one of. If they're not America's team, they're right at the top because there is something special about that. No, okay. Because the Super Bowl logo colors. Okay, so we got 49ers, Ravens winning. I think that's probably the most likely scenario. It's a repeat of a decade ago Super Bowl. But
see, this is I don't know enough about it to really make any. And I also don't know in terms of whose players are injured and who's where and what.
And we certainly hope Arlene is right.
Any given Sunday.
Yeah. Anybody but the Chiefs. That's where I see.
Kind of, yeah. Well, that would normally be like anybody but the Patriots.
And you don't want to hear that from me because odds are the Chiefs are not going to win the Super Bowl because I don't want them to win.
Guys, look up Ozone from Breakin', from the movie Breakin' and Breakin' 2 Electric Boogaloo, and look up the character Ozone. I assure you, I swear, it's Mahomes.
Travers, you don't like my music, Nelson Ortega, Arlene Chambers, Metalopoly, Ray J, Carla Harrington, Ray Infinity, Chris Garrett, Red Cloud,
and beyond.
Enrica Jawa, Randall Giovanetti.
You know what, though? Here's the thing.
Mario.
The Lions winning.
Bruce Carter.
I feel like it's something that would... It's one of those things that would boost the serotonin of the country.
I think so.
It's one of those things that's such an underdog thing. Like, it would be one of those things that just feels good, other than to the obviously the team that they beat. But to the rest of us, it would be. I'd love to see Detroit win a Super Bowl. I've been saying that a long time. Isn't Detroit? They're one of the teams that always plays on Thanksgiving. Or used to always play.
No, they always have. They always do.
Them and the Cowboys.
And the Cowboys. That's
right. Okay.
So that would technically make them the other America's team. Anthony Berg.
I've just always felt bad for Detroit.
Yeah, but you know what? They've got a real fighting spirit to them.
Also, my son, who's a musician,
Sid Nanda,
growing up, he and actually in utero, there was a lot of Motown, and so him growing up, and he's to this day like loves. I mean, he loves classical too, but his most favorite person is Ray Charles, and he loves. Like that kind of music. So I don't know. I have affinity for certain kinds of music.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do because it really means a lot. If you think about chipping in or becoming a patron, it would mean the world as well. Thank you all so much. We'll see what happens Sunday, and we'll see you Monday.